Hello everyone. Welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we are diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. A cold wind slid through the narrow streets of Konoha, barely touching the leaves on the tree branches. For an ordinary citizen, it was just another day, but for a special boy, it meant something more. His name was Naruto. His white hair fell in soft strands on his shoulders, casually framing a pale face without any visible emotion. His eyes, covered with a blindfold, could not see the world in the usual sense, but the boy felt everything around him thanks to his unique ability to spread chakra in space. Chakra responded to every detail, allowing him to perceive outlines and movements, like a pattern of light fog. His name was Naruto Uzumaki, an orphan from the moment of birth and blind from the very moment of his birth. Many in the village pitied him, not realizing that this deficiency became the source of amazing strength. Years of isolation, lack of parental warmth and necessary support left a quiet sadness in the boy's soul. However, instead of closing himself off completely, Naruto learned to listen to himself and the world around him. There was always a spark of determination inside him. Even without sight, he aspired to become a strong ninja, worthy of being called a shinobi of Konoha. In the morning, Naruto usually trained in one of the deserted corners of the training field, where the trees formed a cozy semicircle. The air there was filled with the aroma of pine needles and coolness. Thanks to his ability to sense chakra vibrations within a radius of several meters, he was able to navigate quite confidently. Years of practice taught him to distinguish the smallest nuances, the rustle of leaves, the trembling of a branch from the slightest gust of wind, the heartbeat of a bird that accidentally flew in. Today, the boy decided to practice several taijutsu movements. He carefully put his legs out, feeling the vibration of the solid ground under his feet. The internal flow of chakra spread smoothly through his body, as if cutting through an invisible curtain of darkness. Naruto's hand slid through the air, repeating the familiar movements that one of the Chunin had once taught him, taking pity on an orphan. Each movement was precise, measured, and filled with invisible meaning. "So, we need to improve our coordination, otherwise we'll fail the exam," he muttered in a quiet but confident voice. At that moment, two adult shinobi approached the edge of the field, Ruruka, a teacher at the academy, and Mizuki, his colleague. They watched the lonely boy with curiosity. Although Ruruka always tried to treat Naruto with kindness, understanding how much hardship had fallen to his lot, Mizuki did not hide his slight disdain. "Naruto," Ruruka called, coming closer. "Have you forgotten that we have an important test tomorrow? We'll need to show you basic techniques." "I remember," the boy responded and turned to face the voice, slightly bowing his head. "Are you okay?" Ruruka, smiling, reached out to put his hand on Naruto's shoulder, but came to his senses in time. Naruto didn't like unnecessary touches, especially when he wasn't ready for them. "Yes, everything is fine," the boy nodded. Mizuki looked at him with an appraising glance. "Hey, are you sure you're ready? What can a blind man show in a shinobi exam?" Naruto didn't answer, just clenched his fists. Such remarks had haunted him his entire life. But instead of anger or tears, he had developed the habit of remaining calm. Deep inside, the answer was glimmering. "I will prove that I can see much deeper than you." Ruruka hurried to take Mizuki aside, fearing that his words could hurt the boy. Naruto, catching their retreating footsteps, continued practicing. Later in the evening, when the sun was already setting, he returned to his modest apartment on the outskirts of Konoha. The furnishings were Spartan: a narrow futon, a modest table, a few shelves with food and dishes. On the wall hung an Anbu mask. Naruto had once found it in an abandoned warehouse and left it as a symbol of future goals. For now, the mask was just a reminder of what he could achieve if he became strong enough. Taking off his bandage, Naruto carefully ran his hand over the slightly reddened skin around his eyes. No light, no darkness, only the soft emptiness in which he was accustomed to existing. But instead of a reality painted with colors, another space opened up to him, filled with the movement of chakra. "Tomorrow is the exam," he muttered, leaning his palm on the table. "I will have to show that I can handle the techniques." He took a deep breath and exhaled. Inside, he felt a slight tremor, a mixture of anxiety and inspiration. He may not be a genius, not the best student, and his techniques are not the most powerful, but he has a special feature, the ability to see with chakra. And he has a desire to become a real shinobi. "First, graduate from the academy," Naruto whispered, falling asleep. The next morning began with the early rays of the sun breaking through the thin curtain. Naruto left the house, throwing a fresh clean bandage over his eyes. The walk to the academy took about 20 minutes, if you walked at a leisurely pace. He could feel the village waking up. Shops were opening, people were rushing about their business, and the air was already filled with the aroma of freshly baked goods from the nearby bakery. There was excitement in the academy courtyard. The students were discussing the upcoming test. Naruto caught snatches of conversations. They say the examiner will be strict. We need to have time to show at least the clone technique. I wonder how many people will be expelled. The boy listened to these words warily. He himself understood perfectly well that basic techniques like Bunshin no Jutsu, illusionary clone technique, were more difficult for him than for others. But he prepared hard, trying to feel the movement of chakra in the right way. When everyone had gathered in the classroom, Urka began to take roll call, and then began to explain the task. You will need to perform transformation Henj no Jutsu, clone creation Bunshin no Jutsu, and substitution Kawarimi no Jutsu in sequence. Then I will announce the results. The students began to go out one by one, demonstrating their techniques in front of the teachers. Many were nervous, some did not do it perfectly. Naruto's turn came towards the end. He barely heard the whispers in the audience, but he felt it with his skin, as all eyes were focused on him. Blind boy, he will definitely fail. Read the tense chakra vibrations. Holding his breath, Naruto gathered his chakra. First, the substitution technique. Quick seals, and the boy felt the surrounding space react to his call. The moment he activated the jutsu, a wooden dummy suddenly remained instead of his body. Naruto himself instantly moved to the side several meters. The guys gasped in surprise. The movements were quite coordinated. Then, the transformation technique. Naruto imagined the image of one of the teachers, Ruruka. Having folded the seals, he released chakra, forming an illusory shell. The gaze of those around appeared an exact double of Ruruka, albeit in Naruto's height. And yet there was a slight distortion, barely noticeable. But, considering the boy's lack of vision, this was a worthy result. The most difficult, Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto made the seals again, trying to fill the space with another copy of himself. The problem was that it was necessary to distribute the chakra subtly and create an illusory body that matched the real one. However, the excitement made itself felt. The clone appeared, but slightly rippled, as if trembling. And then suddenly disappeared. Failure arose in the boy's head, but, gathering his will into a fist, he made a second attempt. This time the chakra was distributed a little more carefully, and as a result, a quite passable clone of Naruto appeared next to him. It may not be perfect, but it was something. Well done, said Urka, inspiration in his voice. Maybe not perfect, but you did it. The boy sighed with relief, removing the seals, and bowed. The whispers behind his back seemed to subside. He felt satisfaction because he proved to himself and others that blindness is not a sentence. The exams were over, and many students were given the Konoha protector, symbolizing that they were now active genin. Naruto carefully touched the metal plate on his headband, over which his eyes were still hidden by white cloth. But now it was no longer just a headband, but a symbol honestly earned by the emblem. The next day, the distribution into teams was announced at the academy. Naruto was the last to be called out. Team 7, Kakashi Hatake, your Jonin mentor. The team consists of Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. The boy responded quietly, only nodding, while Sakura and Sasuke glanced briefly. However, each of them was seething with their own worries. Sakura was surprised to be together with such a quiet one. She knew that Naruto was blind, and in her own way she pitied him, but she wasn't sure that he was even competitive as a ninja. Sasuke looked down on Naruto, not feeling an ounce of sympathy. For him, a boy who didn't have even basic vision couldn't pose any threat. We'll need a training ground number 3 tomorrow, Kakashi said sternly when they went outside. Get ready for the teamwork test. The words, teamwork, hung in the air. At some point, it seemed that each of them was a separate universe, not ready for harmonious interaction. But Naruto felt hope inside. Finally, I have a team. Maybe together we can pass all the tests. The next morning, all three were waiting for Kakashi at the training ground. Naruto stood a little to the side, peering into the surroundings with his chakra vision. He had already managed to notice several small animals hiding in the bushes. Sakura and Sasuke were sitting a little further away. She was looking at her clothes with irritation, and he seemed to be trying to fence himself off from everyone. He's late, Sakura muttered, pulling her knees to her chest. How much longer? Sasuke responded dryly, proudly crossing his arms. Naruto himself wanted to ask why the sensei was gone for so long, but chose to remain silent. Time passed, and about 40 minutes later Kakashi appeared, as always, slowly leafing through a book with a colorful cover. Yo, guys, I'm a little lost on the road of life, he muttered his signature phrase, showing no signs of shame at being late. Sakura opened her mouth to protest, but Kakashi waved his hand briefly. Okay. The point of today's test is to test your cohesion. I have 2 bells, and your goal is to take them from me before noon. Those who fail to get the bell will return to the academy. With these words, Kakashi slightly shook his hand, and 2 small silver bells really did jingle in the air. The three of them exchanged glances, or rather, Naruto simply felt Sakura and Sasuke tense up. "Here we go," the mentor said with a smile and suddenly disappeared in a wisp of whitish smoke. Sakura and Sasuke immediately jumped in different directions, hiding among the trees. Naruto, guided by the bursts of chakra, also ran behind the nearest bush. The thought pounded in his head, "We need to work together, but they won't cooperate with me unless I prove that I can be useful." The first thing Naruto did was feel the space with chakra, trying to understand where Kakashi was. For a moment, he caught a vibration indicating a strong flow of energy in the western part of the area. But the sensei moved so quickly and unpredictably that he disappeared into another place a second later. "Sakura, Sasuke," the boy called quietly, hoping that one of them would hear him. There was no answer. It was clear that everyone was trying to act in their own way, without sharing information. Naruto carefully moved among the trees, listening to every rustle. And then he felt Sakura's familiar chakra very close. "Hey," he whispered a little louder. "We need to unite, otherwise we will lose." Sakura pressed herself against the tree trunk, breathing heavily from excitement. For her, this was all a new test in which she needed to show prudence. She nodded, although she knew that Naruto could not see. But, remembering his abilities, she said, "Okay, together." "But where is Sasuke? I think he's on his own." "What's the plan?" Naruto thought for a moment. After all, he didn't have many combat skills, mostly basic techniques in taijutsu at the initial level. But he guessed that Kakashi was testing them precisely for their ability to think and act in a coordinated manner. "Let's try to distract Kakashi," he suggested, "and I'll try to take the bells. My vision might help if he's nearby." Sakura agreed, although she wasn't sure of success. They began to move forward, choosing the moment to attack. But Kakashi was too experienced a shinobi, and suddenly appeared right behind them, saying in his mocking tone, "It's too early for you to fight me openly." A kunai flashed. Sakura jumped back, screaming in fear, and Naruto, catching a dangerous fluctuation of chakra, instinctively jumped back. However, Kakashi had already disappeared, leaving behind only a handful of fallen leaves. "Damn," Naruto cursed, gritting his teeth. "We need to find Sasuke and unite the three of us." Sakura nodded, internally agreeing. They couldn't handle it alone. They carefully, trying not to make noise, moved further towards the edge of the forest, where a slightly denser energy could be felt. Perhaps Sasuke was there. And indeed, Sasuke had tried to attack Kakashi shortly before, throwing shurikens. But the sensei deftly dodged, without even putting away his books. Such a mocking attitude irritated the Uchiha. He concentrated chakra in his hands, trying to use his clan's fire technique when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around to see Naruto and Sakura. "What do you want?" he hissed, not hiding his cold irritation. "Cooperate," Naruto said firmly. "We'll lose if we act separately." Sasuke raised an eyebrow, clearly doubting the wisdom of working together. However, the thought of defeat was even less pleasant, so he reluctantly nodded. "Then stay out of the way," he added more quietly. The three tried to come up with a basic plan. And although they did not discuss the details, everyone understood that Kakashi needed to be at least distracted, and ideally, trapped. It was decided that Sasuke, who had better fighting skills, would engage in combat while Sakura attempted to distract him with illusion clones as much as possible, and Naruto would listen to the fluctuations in his chakra to determine his exact location and accurately pick out the bells when his vigilance was down. They had to wait for several minutes, hiding in the bushes, before Kakashi showed himself again. But when he seemed to be distracted by Sasuke's attack, Naruto had his chance. The trick was to pass the sensation of his mentor's chakra through himself, detect which hand the bells were in, and, taking advantage of the moment, snatch them away. Sakura dashed across the clearing, screaming and waving her arms, and at the same moment released several of her ghostly clones. Of course, they were weak and quickly dissipated, but they distracted Kakashi for a split second. Sasuke attacked with Shuiken, forcing the sensei to switch to sharper dodges. It was at that moment that Naruto rushed forward, channeling chakra into his legs to accelerate. Having run almost closely, the boy made a dash with his right hand, feeling for the trembling of silver bells. But Kakashi reacted with lightning speed, a barely noticeable movement, and instead of Naruto's hand there was only air. Sensei intercepted the boy's wrist and gently, but forcefully threw it to the side. "Nice try," he said with a slight grin, "but not yet coordinated enough." Naruto landed on his feet, barely keeping his balance. His heart was pounding in his chest, and one thought was racing through his head. Are we really not going to be able to get these damn bells? As Sakura and Sasuke continued to attack, Naruto stood up and pulled out a summoning scroll from his bag, the same one he had obtained a few months ago. Summoning snakes was an unexpected power for him. A mysterious snake-like ghost spiritual mentor had taught the boy, deciding that his fusion with nature chakra was perfect for the snake's path. "I'm not a genius," Naruto whispered, biting his thumb to draw a drop of blood for the summoning technique. "But I'm learning hard." After making a few hand seals, he touched his palm to the ground. A surge of chakra, and suddenly a small snake with shining black scales appeared next to him. It was the size of a man's hand, but quite fast. Kakashi glanced at the creature briefly, clearly not expecting Naruto to call him. "Attack," the boy asked the snake briefly. Hissing, the snake took off, rushing towards the sensei. Of course, such a technique could not be decisive against Kakashi, but it created an additional line of attack. While the snake distracted the mentor with short throws, Naruto rushed forward again, counting on having a couple of extra seconds to intercept the bells. Sasuke, noticing the boy's determination, attacked with Kaden, releasing a small fireball. Kakashi was forced to dodge. Sakura adjusted herself, threw several kunai, and at the same time Naruto, using all his concentration, rushed towards the sensei's hand. This time he almost touched the bells, but Kakashi managed to retreat again, forcing the boy's hand to squeeze only emptiness. "Enough," Kakashi suddenly commanded, jumping back. The bells rang softly in his palm. "Time's up." The trio stopped. They had almost no strength left to continue the fight. They didn't get the bells out, but for the first time they tried to coordinate their actions, albeit chaotically. Sasuke's breathing was ragged, Sakura sank heavily to her knees, wiping sweat from her forehead, and Naruto stood with his head down. "So," Kakashi said in a stern tone, "you failed to complete the task. But I still see that you tried to act together." There was a slight note of approval in his voice. "In a real mission against a serious opponent, that's important. I accept you all. You are Team 7. The three of them looked at each other, catching their breath. Naruto felt a strange feeling of warmth inside. "We are now officially a team. Me, Sakura, and Sasuke, under the leadership of Kakashi-sensei." Thus, their first test ended, leaving many questions and plans for the future. Naruto mentally thanked fate for the chance to prove that even blindness would not be an obstacle on the path to a dream. Ahead of him were real missions, dangerous encounters, and new battles. And no one knew how much this quiet blind boy would be able to influence the fate of the entire Hidden Leaf village. The morning in Konoha was crisp and cool, with a light fog creeping across the streets, obscuring the outlines of the buildings. At this early hour, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke were already waiting at the entrance to the building where the shinobi briefings were held. Mentor Kakashi had warned them that their first official D-ranked mission awaited them today. It might not be too interesting, but that was how newly minted genin usually started. Naruto, as always, stood a little further away, his face turned towards the light breeze. He mentally scanned the space with his chakra, noting the presence of random passers-by and smelling the morning baking smell that came from a nearby shop. Yesterday's test still made itself felt in his fatigue, but the pleasant feeling of belonging to the team warmed his soul. "Listen, blind man," Sasuke's cold voice suddenly rang out. "I hope I don't have to drag you on missions by the scruff of the neck." Naruto only sighed quietly. He knew that the Uchiha didn't see any strength or use in him yet. "I'll try to keep up," he replied, trying to remain calm. Sakura stepped between them, sighing. "Guys, calm down. We'll have to work together anyway." Kakashi soon appeared, always relaxed, with a book in his hands. "Good morning," he said in a short greeting, and gestured for them to enter. Behind the massive wooden door was a small room where the Hokage and a couple of assistants were sorting through the mission archives. The third Hokage, Sarutobi, smiled when he saw Team 7. "Kakashi," he addressed the Jonin, "there are a few easy missions for your guys. Take your pick." D-level missions were traditionally small errands like helping farmers, cleaning up yards, or finding a missing cat. According to the list, Kakashi had chosen one of the most boring tasks, painting an old lady's fence at the other end of the village. "Let's start with something simple," the sensei explained, noticing the disappointment on the genin's faces, especially Sasuke's. "Before we take on more serious tasks, we need to learn to work in a group." When they got to the right place, they were met by an old woman who immediately began to indicate how exactly the fence should be painted, from top to bottom, in even strokes so there are no drips. Sasuke was ready to explode from boredom, Sakura was holding back a nervous laugh, and Naruto, as usual, was silent, simply feeling out the new conditions. "The blind boy can only carry cans of paint," the old woman noted, not even suspecting how much her words could hurt him. Naruto only lowered his head. Yes, perhaps he should have gotten angry, but he preferred not to waste his emotions in vain. "Let's see who can really do what," he thought, sighing heavily. Dividing the duties, Sakura approached Naruto. "Hold the brush. Even though you can't see, you can feel chakra, right? Maybe you can sense the distance to the fence." "I'll try," he answered quietly. Taking the brush, Naruto focused on the chakra flows, evening out his breathing. He tried to notice the fence as an object in space. The fine texture of the wood gave off a faint reflection. He carefully brought the brush up and drew an even line of paint. With each movement his confidence grew, and the strokes were laid down quite neatly. Sasuke looked with envy at how Naruto, unable to see with his own eyes, still managed to paint the boards evenly. Of course, he wasn't going to admit it, but inside he felt a slight surprise. Perhaps this blind man isn't so useless. By evening the fence was completely painted. Sakura and Naruto washed their brushes in a bucket, exchanging short phrases, and Sasuke helped stack the remaining cans of paint. The old woman walked along the fence and pretended to be displeased, but there were also notes of gratitude in her voice. "It'll do," she muttered. "At least there are no streaks." Kakashi appeared from behind the bushes. It looked like he had been sitting somewhere reading his book all day, examined the result and nodded with satisfaction. "Well done." As a first mission, not so bad. Returning to the village, Team 7 reported on the completion of the task. Of course, Naruto understood that everyone expected him to fail, but the joy of the first success, albeit in such an everyday matter, warmed him from the inside. In the following days, a whole string of similarly simple missions awaited them. Catch a mischievous cat, repair a small bridge in the suburbs, help a peasant carry sacks of flour. Each time they were faced with the fact that Naruto needed a little more time and effort to do the job on par with the others. Sasuke was infuriated by this, and Sakura balanced between sympathy and irritation. However, Naruto stubbornly continued to try, and sometimes his ability to see with chakra in places where ordinary eyes could fail in the dark or in the rain even came in handy. The team gradually got used to each other. After a few weeks, the day came when Kakashi finally suggested raising the mission level. Sakura and Sasuke were already on the verge of a breakdown. They were too bored with everyday tasks. "Hokage-sama," Kakashi addressed the old man with the pipe, "I think my students are ready to try themselves in AC level mission." The third Hokage thought for a moment. "Well, I have a suitable task. We need to escort a bridge builder back to his country. There may be bandits along the way, but nothing too difficult for a genin and jonin." Kakashi nodded, and then turned to his team. "Did you hear? Get ready for your first away mission. We leave tomorrow morning." Sakura and Sasuke exchanged glances. Finally, a real job. Naruto just smiled quietly, happy that they would have a chance to prove themselves in a real situation. When they met at the appointed time at the eastern gate of Konoha, an elderly man with a round belly and a gloomy expression was waiting for them. His name was Tazuna. He was pulling a cart with tools with which he was going to finish building the bridge in the land of waves. "Is that all you have?" he said in surprise, looking around at Team 7. "Don't worry," Kakashi assured them, adjusting the bandage covering his left eye. "I'm a jonin, and they're promising genin. We'll manage." Tazuna snorted, looking at Naruto. "Is he really blind?" "Better than it seems," the boy answered shortly, trying not to take the comments to heart. The squad set off. Naruto walked slightly behind, periodically scanning the area with his method. He felt the chakra currents of trees, insects and small animals. All this layered into a map of the invisible world, inaccessible to the naked eye. The first day of the journey passed relatively calmly. In the evening, they stopped for a rest at a small river, where Kakashi suggested setting up camp. While Sakura collected brushwood, Sasuke impaled fish on skewers, and Naruto pulled a rope to dry clothes, Kakashi walked around the area in search of signs of enemy activity. "I doubt anyone will attack us," Sakura muttered, stacking firewood. "This is only level C, don't relax," Naruto answered. "Sometimes reality is more complicated than it seems." Sasuke only glanced briefly in their direction, not continuing the conversation. After dinner, Kakashi assigned shifts. At night, one of them should keep watch, so as not to be caught by surprise. Naruto offered to take the first shift. He could see the surrounding moving objects in the dark anyway, albeit with limited accuracy. Sasuke only shrugged, and Sakura yawned and climbed into the tent. The night passed quietly, and as soon as dawn broke, they set off again. Soon, they entered boggy swamps and damp forests. Fog covered everything around, deceptively distorting the outlines. Naruto clearly felt that he could see less than usual. The humid air seemed to dampen his chakra, and he had to spend more energy to scan the area. A couple of times, he thought he caught strange chakra fluctuations nearby, but when he stopped and concentrated, they disappeared. Noticing his tension, Sakura asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm not sure," he admitted quietly. "There's something in this fog." Kakashi, hearing this, reacted instantly, becoming more cautious. The team, noticing the state of their mentor, also tensed up. And for good reason. As they approached the bank of the fast-flowing river, two ninja in black forehead protectors with symbols that did not belong to Konoha emerged from the darkness. Tazuna almost dropped his tool bag as he saw the enemies rush forward with distorted smiles. "Cover Tazuna," Kakashi commanded. Sasuke and Sakura stood on either side of the man, drawing their weapons. Naruto, clutching the kunai, felt his heart begin to pound. "This is not training," flashed through his mind, "this is for real now." The two enemy shinobi attacked swiftly. Kakashi put out his hand, blocking the first blow, and almost immediately disappeared in a dash, forcing the opponents to change tactics. Sasuke threw shuriken to drive them away from Tazuna, and one of the attackers took the weapon away. Naruto realized that it was time to act. He had to concentrate as much as he could to catch the enemy's outline through the damp fog. Making a sharp lunge, he threw a kunai, aiming at the area where he felt the enemy's chakra swaying. However, the enemy was faster and dodged, hitting the boy with the hilt of his weapon. Naruto staggered, feeling a sharp pain. "And you are completely useless," the ninja mockingly said, raising his hand for another blow. But Naruto was not used to giving up so easily. Even while preparing for the exams, he realized that the summoning technique could give him a chance in battle. Again repeating the familiar seals, he summoned a snake, which attacked the enemy's hand, forcing him to pull it away with a cry of pain. "Sakura, Sasuke, take Tazuna away," Naruto managed to shout, realizing that they needed to protect the client. Sasuke nodded and led the man away from the line of attack, Sakura trying to cover them from the flank. At that moment, Kakashi, having dealt with the second opponent, appeared behind the wounded shinobi and knocked him out with a quick move. The first one managed to dodge and tried to run, but Sasuke threw a kunai, pinning the opponent to the tree trunk. He screamed, trying to free himself, and was finally neutralized by Kakashi. "What the hell are ninjas doing here if the mission is only sea level?" Kakashi hissed, looking sternly at Tazuna. "Explain yourself." Tazuna, clearly embarrassed, looked away. "Well, you see, perhaps my task is a little more complicated than I described." "How complicated?" The sensei clarified. "I could be pursued by people who don't benefit from the bridge in the land of waves being completed. But I didn't have enough money to hire a team for a higher mission rank." Kakashi sighed heavily and looked at his students. "It's up to us to decide whether to continue the mission. According to the regulations, we can abort the mission if it turns out to be more dangerous than stated." Sakura and Sasuke looked around. Naruto, suppressing the pain, only thought, "If we leave now, Tazuna will surely die. But if we go further, we may encounter serious opponents. We can't abandon him," Naruto said quietly but confidently. Sasuke thought for a moment, then nodded. "Running away now is cowardice." Sakura clenched her fists tensely. "Okay, we'll help him." Kakashi frowned, but inside he felt respect for the determination of his students. "Well, we'll continue the mission," he decided. "But from now on, Tazuna, do not hide anything from us." He bowed humbly, thanking the entire team. Soon they continued on their way to the land of waves. Naruto felt very tired. The fight with the enemy ninja was not easy, and the wound on his shoulder stung with every movement. However, he tried not to show it, afraid of causing Sasuke's disdain or Sakura's pity. When the twilight enveloped the road in a thick fog, they came to the shore, where the remains of an old pier stuck out of the water. Here they were waiting for a small ferryman, hired in advance by Tazuna. He agreed to take Team 7 to the other side of the river, but insisted that they remain quiet so as not to give themselves away to the patrols. As the boat glided along the calm surface, Naruto tensely listened to his surroundings, distinguishing only the splash of water against the sides. And yet, there was something ominous in this fog. He caught a distant splash, as if someone large had moved underwater. However, neither Kakashi nor the others said anything, so the boy decided not to panic. They landed on the other bank and walked on in silence. About an hour later, the outlines of a large building appeared in the distance, with wooden scaffolding towering above it, the same unfinished bridge. But as soon as they got closer, a silhouette in a mask and a huge sword over his shoulder suddenly emerged from under the veil of fog. Naruto's heart sank. This man radiated strong and menacing chakra, literally making the air around him thicken with tension. "Zabuza," Kakashi whispered, recognizing one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. "This is a mission of a completely different level." Sasuke and Sakura felt as if there was nothing to breathe in the air, and Naruto felt a touch of fear, clear and icy, like a blade. "I've come for Tazuna's head," Zabuza said in a hoarse, low voice, looking at the squad through the slits in his headband. "But I see that guests from Konoha are waiting for me. Well, I'll have to deal with you too." Kakashi, understanding the seriousness of this, gave the command, "Sakura, Sasuke, Naruto, guard Tazuna. I'll take care of this guy." With these words, he moved the headband from his left eye, revealing his famous Sharingan. Sasuke involuntarily tensed up, seeing such a powerful technique of his mentor. Naruto tried his best to scan Zabuza, but his chakra seemed overwhelmingly dense, weighing everything down. Careful, the boy said quietly, sensing that this fight would be incredibly dangerous. Zabuza didn't wait. He swung his giant blade, and a terrible gust of wind mixed with droplets of mist rushed towards Kakashi and Team 7. Covered Tazuna, Kakashi repeated, rushing forward to deflect the blow. The giant sword cut through the air. Team 7 jumped back, Sakura grabbed the arm of a terrified Tazuna, and Sasuke slid to the right, trying to get a good position to attack. Naruto, leaving the snake summoning nearby, tried to sneak closer so that he could feel every pulse of the swordsman's chakra. This is not just a ninja, flashed through the boy's mind, he's on a different level. Kakashi and Zabuza were already locked in a fierce duel. Zabuza's sword flashed with every strike, and Kakashi, with his Sharingan, read his movements, dodging and countering with strikes. Water was kicked up by the clashes, flying in all directions. Team 7 could only watch from the sidelines, knowing it would be too dangerous to interfere. At one point, Zabuza jumped back and made several quick seals, Suiroi no Jutsu. Water prison technique. The air around Kakashi thickened with water, trapping him in a ball. The Sharingan still burned in his left eye, but the Jonin was forced to fight to keep from drowning. Damn it, Sasuke breathed out, seeing that his mentor was trapped. If we don't free Kakashi, we're done for. Zabuza, holding Kakashi in a water prison with one hand, grinned ominously, now you can't protect your client. Surrender, or die. Sakura sobbed in horror. Tazuna stepped back, clenching his trembling hands. Naruto, feeling despair, took a deep breath. If they didn't free their sensei, they didn't stand a chance against such an opponent. But how to get close to Zabuza without being instantly cut down by his monstrous sword? The boy turned to face Sasuke. We need to work together, like with the bells. We don't have time to argue. Sasuke hesitated for a moment, then nodded, realizing that they had one path here, forward. Sakura, cover Tazuna, if anything happens. Naruto and Sasuke rushed forward at the same time, but Zabuza had already put his water clone, created in advance, against them. The clone darted across, reflecting their kunai. Sasuke tried to use the Uchiha clan's fire technique, but the water extinguished the flames almost instantly. Zabuza watched this with an evil grin, continuing to hold Kakashi in a water prison. It seemed to him that these green genin could not do anything. But Naruto, gathering his courage, opened the summoning scroll again, trying to summon a larger snake. He knew that the technique would fail in the damp and watery conditions, but there was no other chance. Katsuyu, summon. This time, a slightly larger snake appeared, its black eyes flashing angrily as it rushed towards Zabuza's clone, intending to distract him. Sasuke, seizing the moment, came from the other side, attacking with a kunai throw, forcing the clone to take a defensive position. Commendable, but still useless, Zabuza muttered, widening his grin, reflecting deadly confidence. However, Naruto, seizing the moment, was able to break closer to the original, and therefore closer to the water prison in which Kakashi was suffocating. Throwing chakra around, the boy concentrated on the subtle vibrations of the water. He felt Zabuza's fingers holding the technique, and he realized that a strong blow to the swordsman's hand was enough to make it tremble and the prison dissipate. Naruto, Sasuke yelled, realizing what he was doing, and threw several shuriken at the original. Zabuza, forced to dodge, loosened his grip for a moment. That's it. Naruto, suppressing his fear, jumped and punched Zabuza from below on the forearm of the arm that held the water prison. A flash of pain shot through his arm, as if he had hit a block of stone, but the swordsman's grip wavered, and Kakashi finally broke free of the trapped ball, coughing and gulping for air. Master! Sakura almost shouted, relieved to see Kakashi free. Well done, Kakashi croaked, catching his breath and turning on his Sharingan again. Now Zabuza was in a less advantageous position. He did not have the advantage of surprise, and he already understood that Kakashi's charges, although genin, but in a critical moment they are capable of acting together. But you will not leave so easily, the swordsman grinned, drawing his blade and again getting into an attack stance. Kakashi responded with only a short glance. A deadly enemy stretched out before him, which could not be underestimated. But pride for the team flashed in the sensei's soul. They risked their lives to free me. The battle was not over yet, but now Team 7 had a chance. Ahead of them awaited a tough fight and a test of character, which would decide how strong this team would be and whether they had enough strength to save Tazuna, complete the mission and survive. Thick fog, swirling over the surface of the water, continued to hide the shore of the land of waves. Only the muffled breathing of the shinobi and the barely audible splashes of water gave away the presence of people. The battle with Zabuza, one of the legendary 7 swordsmen of the mist, entered a critical phase. It seemed that the air was filled with tension, capable of flaring up at any moment. Naruto stood slightly to the side, struggling to catch his breath. The pain in his shoulder, left after the blow of the enemy ninja, was still felt. His snake summoning, wildly hissing, slid nearby, ready to attack again at the first command. Sakura and Sasuke surrounded Tazuna, covering him from different sides, and the center of attention remained two experienced warriors, Kakashi and Zabuza. Both stood, as if constantly studying each other, and softly moved along the clay soil of the coast. Zabuza, you were able to rescue your Jonin from a trap. Commendable, but I will not play the good ninja game with you. My sword is too thirsty for blood to stop. Kakashi, don't forget, Zabuza. You are not fighting Green Genin one-on-one, but me, copy ninja Kakashi. Try not to regret this later. Zabuza smirked through the slit in his mask and stepped forward, raising his giant blade. The muscles in his arms rippled, and the chakra emanating from him resembled an angry, seething flame sent through his veins. Kakashi, on the other hand, looked almost relaxed, one arm hanging casually at his side, and the Sharingan exposed from under his headband flickered smoothly. Naruto saw this entire scene through his ability, chakra fluctuations. He felt that Kakashi was extremely concentrated, although on the outside he appeared calm. He also understood that Zabuza was superior to them in skill. The battle promised to be difficult. Clash of Titans. Zabuza made a swift dash, intercepting the sword in a split second for a horizontal strike. Kakashi, using the Sharingan, calculated the angle of attack and the block turned out to be almost perfect. He crossed the kunai and the other blade in his right hand, making a screeching sound of metal that sent goosebumps down Sakura's skin. The blow was so strong that the ground under Kakashi's feet broke, and he himself was carried several steps away. But he did not fall, softening the impact with a soft slide. Attack! Kakashi suddenly shouted, giving a signal to his students. Sasuke was the first to react. He jumped out of cover with a kunai in his hands and threw several shuriken diagonally, trying to cut off Zabuza's face. The fog immediately began to swirl violently from his movement. Zabuza, noticing the flying shurikens, deflected them with his sword in one deft movement, and metal fragments flew in all directions. However, at the same moment, Sakura, coordinating with Sasuke, threw a second wave of shurikens from above, forcing the enemy to duck. Who are you to come here with your pathetic toys? Zabuza hissed, intercepting the sword. He did not yet know that this was not just a shuriken attack, but a distraction, giving Naruto a few extra seconds to get closer to the summoning distance. The boy had already bitten his finger, preparing the technique. A drop of blood fell on the scroll, and, crossing his fingers in familiar seals, Naruto activated the jutsu, Kuchio's no jutsu. A new snake appeared from the clouds of thick smoke, this time slightly larger than the previous one, almost as tall as a man. Black scales shimmered in the dim light, and yellow vertical pupils sparkled with an angry fire. Hissing briefly, the snake opened its mouth and darted forward, aiming for Zabuza's legs. This is more interesting, the swordsman muttered, jumping back from the attack of the summoned creature. But not enough to stop me. He jumped up, dodging the snake's throw, and raised his huge sword, intending to cut the summoned beast in two. However, the snake was writhing on the ground, its senses allowing it to anticipate the blow, and it slid to the side, breaking into the wet ground and leaving a deep furrow behind it. At the same time, Kakashi rushed from the other side, trying to pin Zabuza between himself and the snake. Naruto, keep your distance. The sensei shouted, blocking another ferocious swing of the blade. The boy nodded, although he knew that Kakashi did not see him. He felt the critical tension of the fight. Any wrong move, and Zabuza could gain a decisive advantage. At such moments, fear and adrenaline intertwined, but Naruto always knew how to remain cool, remembering the team. Sakura bit her lip. It seemed to her that, despite all the coordination, they were only slightly slowing Zabuza down, but were not getting any closer to victory. Sasuke frowned, clutching his kunai. We won't have enough strength if we keep going head-on. We need to be more cunning. He suddenly remembered a story one of the instructors at the academy had told him, that against such a strong enemy, it was sometimes better to act secretly, using traps and strategies. Sakura, Sasuke whispered, glancing back. Try to move to the left, I'll try to take the right side. And let Naruto hold the center, along with Kakashi. We'll surround Zabuza so that he can't swing his sword freely. Sakura glanced quickly at the boy. Unlike him, she didn't have very developed combat techniques, but she had a good sense of precision and coordination, and she knew the basic techniques of medical ninja from the senior kunoichi at the hospital. Okay, I'll take the risk. She decided. Sasuke darted to the right, Sakura to the left, and Naruto took a position closer to the center. Zabuza felt the space around him begin to shrink, and his eyes narrowed in displeasure. He had never had to deal with a group of newbies for so long before. Apparently the experienced Jonin had actually managed to teach them something. We'll have to pick up the pace, he said ominously, and in a few leaps he pushed Kakashi back to the water's edge, depriving him of solid ground under his feet. Kakashi slid his heels through the shallows, feeling the cold water bite into his shoes. The Sharingan in his left eye spun in concentration, catching the slightest fluctuations in the swordsman's chakra. Kakashi parried blow after blow with the precision worthy of the title of Copy Ninja. Splashes flew in all directions, and Zabuza, missing time after time, began to show signs of anger. "You're just copying movements, where is your real strength, Kakashi?" Zabuza yelled, attacking again in a jump. Kakashi blocked another blow, then locked eyes with his opponent for a split second. "I'll show you now," he said quietly. Naruto, quickly assessing the situation, realized soon Kakashi will activate some technique. However, the boy felt that he himself had to contribute. Concentrating, he ran chakra along his legs, making a quick throw to get closer to the place of the fight. The summoning snake, left slightly behind, wriggled, ready to strike again at the first command. "Sakura, Sasuke," he called quietly, catching their chakra nearby. "Can you distract Zabuza temporarily if he gets away from Kakashi?" "I'll handle the distraction," Sasuke hissed, feeling the excitement of the fight. "Sakura, cover Tazuna." Sakura nodded obediently. She was eager to help more, but protecting the client was the priority right now, and she understood that. An unexpected ally. Just when the tension reached its peak, a slender figure wearing a Mist Hunter Nin mask suddenly slipped out of the mist. The figure appeared smoothly from the side, like a shadow, and said in a thin voice, "Zabuza, do you need help?" The voice was soft, almost polite, but the very appearance of this figure in a patterned mask resembled a deadly statue, ready to attack at any moment. Naruto felt a strange, almost weightless chakra, but surprisingly cold, like ice. "Hiku," Zabuza said shortly, glancing briefly at the newcomer. "Finally came. It seems these guys were a little stronger than I expected." Naruto tensed internally. Another strong opponent flashed through his mind. "Can we handle this now?" Sasuke, sensing something was wrong, clutched the kunai and took a defensive stance. Sakura leaned towards Tazuna, squeezing the client's hand to keep him from rushing forward in panic. "Hiku," Zabuza said, looking sideways at Kakashi, "make sure those genin don't get in the way. I'll deal with the copy ninja myself." The masked figure seemed to nod, and instantly disappeared, only to reappear next to Sasuke. Sasuke barely had time to step back and swing his kunai, but Hiku was already in another spot. The movements of this mysterious ninja were striking in their speed and grace. So fast, Sasuke hissed through clenched teeth, his eyes widening. He could barely catch the direction from which the next blow would come. Naruto moved closer, trying to turn on his chakra vision to the maximum. He felt the strange structure of Haku's chakra. It was very pure and soft, flowing smoothly and evenly, which probably explained such a high speed of movement. "Sasuke," Naruto said quietly, "try to drive him towards the lake, there will be less room to maneuver there." The young Uchiha nodded slightly. He realized that together they might have a chance to suffocate the space for Haku, just like they had tried to limit Zabuza before. "Sakura," Naruto called out to her, "keep an eye on Tazuna's safety. If Haku breaks through, stop him before he gets there with a weapon or whatever you can." "Understood." Sakura took a more closed position, holding Tazuna by the shoulder. Haku, realizing that his opponents were trying to corner him, gracefully slid across the wet ground, pulling out thin senbon needles from a sheath on his belt. In one swift motion, he threw several needles aimed at Sasuke. Sasuke managed to parry some of them with a kunai, but one needle scratched his shoulder, causing a short flash of pain. "Damn it!" Sasuke cursed, turning to strike back. Haku jumped back, and Naruto's snake jumped out at him, hissing and trying to grab his opponent by the ankle. Haku gracefully jumped over it, but this gave Naruto time to close the distance. He tried to punch from below, counting on Haku's concentration on the snake. The blow only passed the edge of the enemy's clothes. He dodged all the attacks with incredible dexterity. "You're holding up well," Haku said softly, turning to Sasuke and Naruto. "But you won't win in speed." Before the boys could answer, Haku activated his chakra and suddenly created something similar to thin streams of water that began to thicken into ice mirrors in a circle. Naruto felt a painful tingling of chakra. It seemed to pierce the air and water, freezing the moisture into transparent plates. "My technique, demonic mirrors of ice," Haku quietly declared. A whole ring of ice mirrors appeared before Sasuke and Naruto's eyes, and Haku immediately dissolved into one of the reflections. Sasuke involuntarily gasped when a masked face appeared in each mirror. It seemed that the enemy was everywhere at once. "Naruto, be on guard," he shouted. The boy listened to the streams of chakra, realizing that Haku was moving between the mirrors at some incredible speed. Suddenly, senbons came flying from behind, and Naruto miraculously managed to duck, while Sasuke covered himself with a kunai, knocking some of the needles away. "Too fast," Naruto said through clenched teeth, regaining his balance. "We can't predict which mirror he'll come out of." Sasuke squinted, looking for any sign that would help him distinguish the real Haku. But all the mirrors seemed the same mask was visible in all of them. Little by little, it became clear to them why Zabuza was so calm. He had this mysterious ally who could paralyze an opponent in an icy labyrinth. Fight with mirrors. Seeing that the situation had become complicated, Sakura, staying next to Tazuna, anxiously clutched her kunai in both hands. She felt helpless. What can I do to help them get out? She didn't want to leave the client alone, but she knew that without support the boys could die. Mistress Kunoichi, Tazuna whispered, noticing her despair. Leave me alone, I'll hide behind that log. If you survive, I'll survive too. Sakura thought for a moment, looking at the two boys who were rushing around inside the ice ring, and made a decision. Okay, Tazuna-san. Hide there and don't stick your head out. I'll try to help the boys. Tazuna dove behind the log, and Sakura, switching to combat mode, began to carefully approach the ice mirrors. Maybe if I hit them from the outside, they'll crack. An idea came to her. She rushed to the nearest mirror and hit it with a kunai with all her might. However, the solid ice surface only cracked slightly, and even that crack healed almost immediately thanks to the alien chakra. This isn't ordinary ice, she said, jumping back. We need a more powerful technique here. Inside the trap, Naruto and Sasuke were thrashing around under a hail of senbon. Both already had shallow wounds. Naruto could feel blood slowly trickling down his arm, and Sasuke had a gaping cut on his side, soaked in blood. But their stubbornness wouldn't let them give in. Sasuke, Naruto croaked, you haven't awakened your Sharingan, have you? Not yet, the Uchiha answered in an angry whisper, understanding what Naruto was getting at. I can't yet. They knew that Sasuke had the ability to awaken the Sharingan hidden in his bloodline, but it only manifested itself in critical moments, associated with strong emotions and a threat to life. So far, Sasuke has not fully revealed his clan potential. I'll try to intercept his chakra movement, Naruto suggested. If I can guess the moment from which he attacks, we can strike back. Sasuke nodded, gathering his courage. Okay, signal, and I'll throw shuriken. Naruto, covering his eyes behind the blindfold, concentrated all his sensory ability. He saw flashes of chakra when Haku moved across the mirrors, but it looked like traces of lightning, too fast and flickering movement. A couple of times the boy caught the phase of the enemy's exit from the mirror, but did not have time to give a clear signal. Too fast, he thought. If only I could expand my chakra even more. But in a fight with such an opponent, any mistake could be fatal. Outside, Sakura continued to hit the mirrors, but to no avail. She could only hope that Kakashi would be able to defeat Zabuza and come to her aid. However, looking to the side, she saw that the fight between the sensei and the swordsman was getting more intense. They had already moved almost to the very edge of the water. There, giant waves were rising with a roar, generated by the water techniques of both fighters. Double battle. Meanwhile, Kakashi finally decided to use a more serious technique, noticing that Zabuza was not going to give in. He jumped back a few meters and began to quickly form a combination of seals, Suiruden no Jutsu. Water dragon technique. From the rising wave, a huge dragon's head formed, sculpted from the raging streams. It howled, rushing towards Zabuza, threatening to destroy everything in its path. Zabuza, without wasting a second, responded with the same technique. Two water dragons collided in the middle of the river with a roar like thunder. Splashes and water dust flew for tens of meters, drenching the shore with a shower of drops. Damn, what power! Sakura whispered, squinting to see what was happening. Looking towards the mirrors, she realized that this water storm could also be useful. If the splashes reached the ice structures, the temperature could drop or, conversely, something in the structure would change. But the stream was now hitting too far, and few drops were reaching. The fight between Kakashi and Zabuza continued. The swordsman, using the fog and speed, every now and then tried to catch the sensei in another water trap, but the Sharingan allowed Kakashi to see his movements a few moments ahead. However, the Jonin also looked tired. The water dragon technique took a lot of strength, and the wound from the previous sword strikes made itself felt. Awakening the force inside the ice prison, Haku continued to methodically throw senbon at Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto was already barely standing on his feet. Many small wounds burned his skin, and blood dripped onto the cold surface. Sasuke was also wounded, breathing heavily and intermittently. But something new was rising in the Uchiha's heart, a mixture of rage and despair. He couldn't afford to lose. He couldn't watch his comrades die, even if he still didn't fully understand how he felt about Naruto. Haku flashed in the mirror to the left, releasing another batch of senbon. Sasuke jumped forward, holding out his kunai, and suddenly caught movement in his peripheral vision. A feeling of furious determination pierced his mind. I won't lose, Sasuke growled. At that moment, his eyes, which had long been experiencing internal pressure, seemed to flash, opening with some new radiance. A single volume Sharingan formed in each eye, not yet complete but enough to catch Haku's jerky movements. The enemy froze for a moment in his mirrors, sensing a dangerous change. "There it is," Naruto whispered, noticing the flash of Sasuke's chakra. Although he himself could not see with the Uchiha's eyes, he felt a sharp increase in his comrade's spiritual power. Sasuke straightened his shoulders, his eyes burning with determination. When Haku rushed to attack again, Sasuke managed to predict the trajectory of the needles and dodged to the side, flawlessly knocking down several Senbon in midair. This amazed Haku. How could he catch my speed? "Naruto, now!" Sasuke shouted, turning around briefly. Naruto realized that he was being given a signal to counterattack and concentrated on the summoned snake. The snake raised its head, searching from which mirror Haku would emerge. Sasuke, using his sharpened Sharingan, calculated the moments. When Haku appeared in one of the mirrors, intending to throw needles, Sasuke threw several shurikens at an angle, forcing his opponent to twitch. He dodged, but lost a split second, and this turned out to be decisive. "Kuchiyos, attack!" Naruto commanded, feeling the snake rush forward. Sliding along the floor, it sank its fangs into the base of the nearest mirror, and then sharply curved like a catapult, throwing itself to the next one. A sharp blow with its tail caused a crack in the icy surface. Haku jumped back, trying to maintain control over the mirrors, but under a hail of attacks it was becoming increasingly difficult. Sasuke, continuing to use the Sharingan, quickly approached one of the mirrors, delivering an aimed punch. The mirror began to crumble. "No!" Haku exclaimed, realizing that the loss of even one element of the structure would weaken the entire technique. For a moment, his control wavered, and the mirrors went dark. This was enough for Sakura, who was watching from the outside, to hit the outer side of the ice barrier again, now generously watered, with splashes from the water battle of Kakashi and Zabuza. The ice became a little more brittle, and Sakura was able to break off a whole shard. Another blow, and the mirror cracked. Cracks began to spread throughout the entire structure. Haku rushed around in a panic, trying to restore the technique, but Sasuke attacked without stopping. The eyes in the tomo of the Sharingan now allowed him to see where to move. Naruto, having gathered the last of his strength, supported the snake, which crushed the lower edges of the mirrors with its tail and fangs. Ultimately, the ice prison crumbled into fragments that fell to the ground with a ringing sound, mixing with water and blood. Haku found himself standing in the middle of the ice shard, barely keeping his balance, breathing heavily. His mask was slightly cracked near the edge. "How did you do that?" he whispered, trying to catch his breath. Sasuke was silent, feeling his heart pounding somewhere in his throat. He finally realized that his Sharingan had awakened, although not at full strength. Naruto, staggering, took a step forward. Deep down, he felt sorry for Haku, because the chakra he sensed from his opponent did not seem angry, but rather sad. But they had no choice. This was a fight, and Tazuna's life and the entire team's were at stake. "Surrender," Naruto said quietly, although his voice trembled from pain and fatigue. Haku looked down. "I can't lose," he thought. "Zabuza needs me," but looking at the boys, who were holding on with all their might, he felt a strange sympathy. They are protecting someone important to them, just like me. At this point, the battle paused. Everyone froze in place, catching their breath and assessing their losses. The decisive moment on the other side, by the water, Kakashi and Zabuza were also approaching the climax of the battle. Both were wounded, their breathing was heavy, and their remaining chakra was in danger of running out. However, neither of them was going to retreat. The fate of the entire mission depended on whose blow would be the last. "Zabuza," Kakashi breathed out, still watching the swordsman through his Sharingan. "You can't win. I have a team that won't abandon me in trouble. And with you, I only have one ally, and that's..." He glanced briefly at the fight between the Genin and Haku. Apparently, the mirror technique had failed. Zabuza frowned, realizing that the boy, the tool he trusted, couldn't deal with the children. "You don't know what Haku is to me," he snapped, raising his sword. "But we're not done yet." Kakashi formed the tiger seal, gathering the last of his chakra. "Now you're about to see my signature move, the one that earned me the nickname Copy Ninja." He suddenly moved his left hand to his eye and pulled out a kunai. What is he going to do? Zabuza barely had time to react as Kakashi lunged forward with blinding speed, making a series of complex gestures. HRRR. The swordsman tried to strike, but his blade only pierced the remains of the water clone. The real Kakashi appeared from the side, ahead of his opponent by a split second, and released a stream of chakra, cutting everything in its path. "That's not all," Zabuza croaked, parrying the last attack with difficulty. He no longer had enough strength for a full-fledged counterattack. The strength was running out, and the fog around suddenly began to dissipate. Probably, nature itself felt that the battle was approaching its denouement. And at that very moment, when Kakashi was about to deliver the decisive blow, a familiar figure in a cracked mask darted from behind Zabuza, Haku. He rushed between the fighters, spreading his arms to cover Zabuza with himself. No, he said quietly, addressing Kakashi. Don't kill him, but the enemy had already raised his kunai, and it was almost impossible to stop the movement. Realizing that Haku was literally sacrificing himself, Kakashi tried to soften the blow, moving his body to the side. The blade slid along Haku's sleeve, leaving a deep cut, and abruptly stopped a few centimeters from the vital organ. Damn, Kakashi whispered, jumping back. Do you want to die for him? Haku lowered his head. Yes. If that's what Zabuza-sama needs. Zabuza looked at Haku with a mixture of anger and a strange feeling that he himself did not want to admit. Perhaps it was affection. After all, Haku was not just a tool, he was a child who saw Zabuza as a savior and a teacher. Taking advantage of the momentary confusion, Zabuza jumped back, intercepted the sword and angrily looked at Team 7. The exhausted Sasuke and Naruto stood next to Sakura and Tazuna. Kakashi held a kunai in front of Haku. Everyone froze, as if at the crossroads of destinies. Unexpected intervention. The silence was suddenly broken by screams. Gato's men came out onto the shore, the very man who wanted Tazuna dead. They had spears and clubs in their hands. They saw that Zabuza was losing and decided, why should we even pay a mercenary? We will finish off these shinobi and Tazuna ourselves, and at the same time get rid of unnecessary expenses. Hey, Zabuza, growled one of the bandits with an ugly scar. You've done your job, we'll handle the rest ourselves. And you, get out of here, we don't need losers. Zabuza felt bitterness. He knew that Gato had never intended to pay him fairly in the first place, and now, seeing the weakened ninja, these thugs decided to finish them all off so as not to waste money. Anger flashed in the swordsman's eyes. You dare betray me? Stop, Haku said quietly, but the bandits only burst out laughing, waving their weapons. There were at least 10 of them, maybe more. Kakashi realized that such opponents would be easy to deal with, but Team 7 was seriously exhausted. Zabuza was seriously injured, and even Haku would hardly be able to fight normally. However, the bandits did not plan to engage in a fair fight. They simply wanted to crush the exhausted ninja with numbers. Disgusting creatures, Zabuza breathed out, squeezing the hilt of his blade. Did you hear that, Haku? They think we're defective. Haku was silent, realizing that now it could all end for both of them. But his gaze remained determined. After all, Zabuza was everything to him. We'll still complete the mission, Kakashi said, addressing his team. Our goal is to protect Tazuna until he finishes building the bridge. Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura took up defensive positions around Tazuna. Looking at their fighting spirit, the bandits slightly lowered their self-confident tone, but there were too many of them, and they slowly began to surround the shinobi. Zabuza-sama, Haku said quietly, allow me. The swordsman placed his hand on Haku's shoulder. It's not worth it. You're already wounded. A pause, and suddenly, something reminiscent of old pride and anger flashed in Zabuza's eyes. That damn Gato decided to betray me. Then I'll personally deal with his people. He raised his huge sword, straightened up, ignoring the pain, and rushed forward like a whirlwind. The bandits were taken aback by the surprise, but immediately began waving their clubs and spears. At the same time, they completely forgot about Team 7, switching to the mad swordsman rushing towards them with a thirst for revenge. Sasuke, Naruto, Sakura called, pointing at the remaining bandits. We need to cover Zabuza and Haku while he distracts the main thugs. The boys, though exhausted, knew that this was their chance. If they could clear the battlefield, they could finally secure Tazuna. They charged at those who remained, on the flank, keeping an eye on Zabuza's fury. Even with his wounds and depleted chakra, he struck down the bandits with one vicious swing of his blade, as if he was taking revenge for all the humiliation he had endured. The end of the battle and a new page. When the dust and fog settled in the bandits, bodies lay strewn on the shore, victory had passed to Team 7. And, oddly enough, partly to Zabuza and Haku. Gato, cowardly hiding behind his men, fled, realizing that he could not cope with such opponents. But he did not run far. According to rumors, the locals themselves later overthrew his rule. Kakashi and his students knelt down tiredly. Tazuna, groaning, approached Kakashi, thanking him for his protection. However, without the participation of Zabuza and Haku, they might have had a much harder time. Zabuza, Kakashi said, looking at the swordsman, covered in cuts and clutching his side. It looks like we have a drawn-out draw. What are you going to do? Zabuza was breathing heavily, barely holding his sword. Haku stood next to him, supporting him by the arm, and looked at Kakashi through his broken mask. We're leaving, the swordsman finally said. There's nothing more for me in the land of waves. Kakashi nodded. He knew that organizing a decisive battle now was pointless and cruel, and he had almost no strength left. Naruto, Haku called quietly, turning to the white-haired boy, who was tiredly leaning against a piece of a log. You managed to touch my heart. I know you didn't want this fight, but such is the fate of the shinobi. Naruto answered barely audibly, I felt that you have no malice. You simply protected Zabuza the same way I protect my friends. Haku hung his head sadly. If they had met in another place and another time, they might have become allies. But now he could only accept the reality. Looking at his teacher, he knew it was time to leave. Zabuza, leaning on his huge blade, looked around at the tired Team 7. Maybe deep down he admired the resilience of these brats, but out loud he only said, don't get in my way in the future. He staggered away, and Haku, supporting him, followed him, disappearing into the milky white fog that had thickened over the shore again. Team 7 breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that the fight was over. Did we win? Sakura asked quietly, turning to Kakashi. We survived, the sensei corrected her, touching his hand to the wound on his shoulder. I guess that's already an achievement. Sasuke, finally releasing the accumulated tension, collapsed to the ground and closed his eyes. His Sharingan dimmed, returning to its normal state. He still didn't fully understand what had happened, but he knew that he had awakened part of his clan's power. Naruto, feeling his own bandage, only nodded tiredly. He, too, was at the limit. We still have a mission left, to protect Tazuna until the bridge is finished, Kakashi reminded with feigned cheerfulness. So now we need to bandage the wounds and regain our strength. Tazuna looked at his protectors with respect and gratitude. He hadn't expected things to turn out this way, but now he understood. These shinobi weren't just mercenaries, they were people willing to risk their lives for the sake of duty. Afterward to the chapter Team 7 finally found shelter in Tazuna's house. The passion of the battle had subsided, giving way to fatigue, medicine and restorative sleep. Sakura, having some healing skills, helped bandage cuts and apply compresses. Kakashi, healing wounds, could not stop thinking about the test his students had gone through. Sasuke awakened the Sharingan, Naruto showed amazing persistence, and Sakura showed that she was not helpless and could act when necessary. Naruto himself felt that this fight had changed him. He understood from his own experience how thin the line between life and death is for a ninja. The opponents who seemed evil had their own motives, the people he saved were ready to make sacrifices. He remained blind, but his vision of the world became deeper. The following days were spent recovering and helping Tazuna work on the bridge. Gradually, the locals, inspired by the courage of the shinobi, joined the construction, and rumors of Gato's escape inspired the people to fight for freedom to the end. Kakashi figured that in a couple more days, the bridge would be finished, the mission would be over. Looking at his students, he smiled under his mask. They have become stronger. And this is only the beginning of their journey. Several days had passed since the violent clash with Zabuza and Haku. During this time, Team 7 had managed to recover, heal their wounds and get plenty of rest. With each passing morning, the sun's rays began to illuminate the bridge, which was becoming more and more ready for use. Workers and locals were working hard, striving to complete the construction as soon as possible. The roar of hammers, the ringing of metal, the rhythmic knocking on the boards, all these sounds merged into a noisy symphony of awakening hope. It was this hope that now inspired the inhabitants of the Land of Waves. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura, although new to full-fledged missions, still managed to prove that they were capable of acting together. Looking at his students, Kakashi was inwardly proud of their endurance. He himself had almost recovered from his wounds, although sometimes he had to carefully hold his side, where a deep cut remained after the fight with Zabuza. Sasuke occasionally put his hand to the bandage on his forearm, not so much from the pain as in thought about his new sensation. The Sharingan had literally awakened at a critical moment. Sakura, on the other hand, continued to care for the wounded in the village, using her basic knowledge of medicine. As for Naruto, his white hair was already neatly tied with a fresh cloth that hid his eyes. He still saw the world around him by sensing his chakra. The boy often went off to train alone, getting used to the new sensations after such difficult battles. The morning before a new mission, "Listen, Naruto," Sakura addressed him as he carefully rolled up the summoning scroll at the foot of a small hill. "Are you okay? You've become even more silent since that fight." Naruto turned at her voice, bowing his head slightly. "Yeah, I'm just thinking about Haku. He seemed so kind, even though he fought against us." Sakura nodded, lowering her gaze. She, too, remembered the look of the young ninja in the cracked mask. Sometimes enemies are not evil, but simply driven by desperate circumstances. Kakashi-sensei said that today we officially end the mission, she reminded, trying to diffuse the atmosphere. The bridge is almost ready, Tazuna is already choosing a name. "I hope there will be no more surprises," Naruto answered. The pair slowly moved towards the bridge under construction, where Sasuke, Kakashi and Tazuna himself were waiting for them. Seeing the approaching genin, Tazuna smiled at them. "Oh, it's great that you came. All that's left is the finishing touches, putting up some railings here and there and securing a couple of planks. After that," he straightened up, "the bridge will be ready for the grand opening." Sasuke shrugged incredulously, as if to say, what could be grand about an ordinary bridge? However, as soon as he glanced around, he realized that for the people of the Land of Waves, this bridge symbolized a new stage in the fight for freedom from Gato and other bandits. Sasuke, Sakura, Naruto, Kakashi addressed them, hiding his hands in his pockets. Today we will help Tazuna with the last works. Let's check if there are any remaining mercenaries nearby. Although Gato escaped, the risk cannot be ruled out. Yes, Sensei, the three answered almost in unison, getting down to business. While Sasuke and Sakura were lifting long wooden beams, Naruto used his sensorics to check if anyone was sneaking around. The boy spread thin threads of chakra for several dozen meters, catching human presence. However, all that could be heard around were the leisurely steps of carpenters, the quiet conversations of women who were bringing water, and the rustle of the wind in the coastal bushes. The last test fight, guys, Kakashi suddenly said, looking at his charges, since everything is calm here, let's have a training sparring match. We need to check how much you have learned from your meeting with Zabuza. This proposal especially interested Sasuke. He felt that after awakening the Sharingan he could act more accurately, but he still did not fully understand the scale of his new capabilities. Sakura also wanted to test what she had learned in real battles, for example, how to quickly analyze the situation and protect the more vulnerable members of the team. And Naruto always strove for self-development, understanding that his power to summon snakes and with chakra were only part of what could be revealed. Okay, Naruto responded, turning his head at the sound of Kakashi's voice. But let's find a place where we won't interfere with the builders. So they moved a little to the side of the bridge, to where the solid ground rose in a small slope. This is where they decided to conduct an impromptu training session. Kakashi stood in the center, the three students, at a distance. The rules are simple, the Jonin explained. The three of you against me alone. The goal is to take this bell from me. From his inside pocket he pulled out a familiar silver bell, and Sakura couldn't help but think of that very day when they were rookies and failed their first attempt, not wanting to cooperate. Now they had a fight with a real dangerous enemy behind them, so this would be a re-examination of sorts. Here we go, Kakashi commanded, casually tossing the bell from one hand to the other. Sasuke immediately darted to the right, trying to hide behind a ledge of rock. Sakura decided to take a position on the left, while Naruto, exhaling, slowly moved straight towards the sensei, scanning the space. He concentrated on each movement, catching the vibrations of Kakashi's chakra. Despite his apparent relaxation, he was on guard. Let's remember what we learned from the fight with Zabuza. Sakura encouraged herself mentally, moving closer to the shelter of large boulders. Work together, coordinate attacks, look for a weak spot. Naruto came from somewhere deep in the rocks. Sasuke's voice was quiet but clear. Can you cover me with a summoning technique when I try to lure Kakashi out into the open? I will, the boy responded shortly, slightly lifting the bandage above his eyebrow to concentrate the chakra in his hands. Kakashi smiled inwardly, noticing their coordination. They really are broing, he thought, ducking behind a rock. Meanwhile, Sasuke was already throwing shurikens, aiming at Kakashi to test his reaction. Naturally, he dodged, two shuriken piercing the ground, and the third was knocked down by the Jonin's kunai. All this was just a distraction so that Naruto could get into a good position to summon. Kuchio's no jutsu, Naruto whispered, sliding his fingers along the scroll. He summoned a medium-sized black snake again, and it hissed as it emerged from the cloud of smoke, aiming for the nearest moving object, that is, Kakashi. He quickly moved to the side, forcing the snake to miss, and then Sakura came into play, throwing three kunai from slightly above, hoping that Kakashi would not be able to parry the snake's lunge and the air attack at the same time. However, the Jonin easily demonstrated why he was considered one of Konoha's strongest shinobi. He ducked to the side, crossing his arms with kunai at such an angle that he deflected the projectiles and dodged a snake bite. Good, he praised, glancing back at Sakura, but don't forget that I can still read your movements. We'll see, Sakura hissed, raising a second kunai. At that moment, Sasuke decided on a bolder move. While forming seals, he suddenly released a weak version of the Kaden Gokaku no Jutsu fireball technique. The bright flame ball, of course, was not as big as that of the adult Uchiha, but it still gave off heat. Kakashi was forced to jump back to a safe distance, and the edge of his sleeves was slightly singed. Taking advantage of this second's pause, Sakura and Naruto moved almost in sync, trying to take their mentor in a pincer movement. The snake, supporting them, wagged its tail, throwing itself forward to pin the target. Wow, Kakashi muttered quietly, truly surprised by the student's tactical combination. Fire style plus a close attack, and a snake on the flank. All they need now is a clear signal. But the thought of a signal did not have time to disappear, as Naruto suddenly shouted, now. Sakura. The girl rushed towards Kakashi, distracting him with a short taijutsu combo, although not very strong, but enough to knock the enemy off the line of evasion. The snake swung its tail, throwing out a huge amount of dust, and Kakashi, raising an eyebrow, momentarily lost visual contact with Sasuke. And he was already behind, trying to snatch the bell from the sensei's hand. Sasuke rejoiced to himself, almost touching the treasured trophy with his fingers. However, as soon as his hand approached the bell, Kakashi suddenly dissolved in a cloud of smoke. It was just a clone. The real Jonin emerged literally from under the ground about 3 meters on the other side. With a proud grin, he demonstrated the same shiny bell. Not bad, admitted Kakashi, but not enough yet. You lacked coordination at the very end. Sasuke, you're in a hurry with your grip, and Sakura could. He didn't have time to finish, because at that very moment the snake, realizing that something had gone wrong, suddenly darted towards him, trying to attack from below again. Kakashi, of course, dodged, but Sasuke took advantage of the sudden movement, abruptly changed trajectory, and this time with a feint he caught the bandage on Kakashi's belt with a kunai, so much so that the bell, jingling, slipped out of his mentor's hand. Got it. Sasuke exhaled, landing a meter from his sensei and picking up the bell. Sakura and Naruto immediately stopped, looking at all this with relief and joy. Kakashi raised an eyebrow with slight disbelief, but then smiled, acknowledging their success. Well, you did it this time. Sakura laughed with relief, wiping sweat from her forehead. Naruto bowed slightly, releasing his snake as he did so, and it hissed and melted into a cloud of summoning. Sasuke simply twirled the bell in his hand, pleased that he had outplayed his teacher, at least in terms of training. Remember, Kakashi added when everyone had caught their breath, that your strength is teamwork. Only then can you defeat even more experienced opponents. Delighted guests, the joyful atmosphere was broken by an alarmed cry coming from the direction of the bridge. From the way it suddenly broke into a whisper, it became clear that this was a cry of alarm, not joy. Team 7, wary, immediately rushed back there, where the construction was in full swing. When they got there, they saw several strangers in black robes, vaguely reminiscent of Gato's bandit gang, but with a different coat of arms. Apparently, these were the remnants of the mercenaries who decided to try to attack the village while the bridge was not yet finished. About a dozen people, armed with blades and whips, kept several workers in fear, twisting their hands. The rest of the residents did not dare to approach. The village chief has already tolerated us enough. One of the bandits growled angrily, threatening Tazuna with a kunai, obviously a trophy. Surrender, and we will not touch the rest. Like hell, Tazuna flared up, trying to break free. I will not let you destroy what everyone here risked for. The mercenaries bared their teeth angrily. They apparently decided to finish the job they started with Gato, but now, on their own and at the expense of the fear of the villagers. Kakashi silently assessed the situation, noticing that there were no clearly experienced shinobi among the enemy, only brute force and numerical superiority. Sakura, Sasuke, Naruto, he quietly addressed the team. Act quickly, do not give them the opportunity to injure the hostages. Hearing the command of the sensei, the genin moved forward in 3 shadows. Sakura, carefully, trying to crawl from the flank, Sasuke, slightly in front, and Naruto, from the opposite side, directing his sensory ability to the cordon of bandits. The initiative belonged to them. The bandits clearly did not expect that there were any combat-ready shinobi left here, and agile ones at that. Begin, Kakashi shouted, and he himself rushed to the central group to distract them from Tazuna. Quick fight! The mercenary holding Tazuna by the collar didn't have time to react before Kakashi was already standing behind him and knocked him out with a short blow to the neck. Another bandit rushed to help, but was immediately tripped by Sakura, who knocked his weapon out of his hands. Sasuke, flashing like black lightning, threw 3 shurikens into the hands of the third bandit, forcing him to drop his whip. Naruto, connecting chakra to his legs, quickly jumped up to the fourth, twisting and snatching the dagger from him. He didn't even understand how he ended up lying on the ground with a twisted elbow. Stop, the leader of the remaining ones screamed, hugging the cowering apprentice boy. One more step and he's finished. The situation escalated. It seemed that this leader was ready to do anything just to escape the trap. Sakura froze, afraid to provoke him into irreversible action. Sasuke frowned. Naruto, catching the child's trembling chakra, knew that he was terribly afraid. Kakashi raised his hand, as if telling the others, don't move. What do you want? Kakashi asked calmly, looking into the eyes of the bandit. Let us pass, or I'll cut his throat. He screamed in a fit of despair. Kakashi was silent, thinking about how to prevent them from escaping without putting the hostage in danger. There were 3 bandits left, but that was enough to pose a threat to the unarmed residents. Okay, I'll let you go, the sensei said quietly, slowly lowering the kunai, just don't touch the child. The bandit leader narrowed his eyes, will they really give up? But something felt wrong. He backed away, dragging the hostage along with him, but at that moment Sasuke suddenly appeared on the other side. He managed to use a distraction, a clone that briefly took on the appearance of Sakura, giving the impression that she remained in place. Taking advantage of the confusion, the Uchiha rushed towards the bandit with a short dash. The latter, of course, tried to slash the hostage across the throat, but Sasuke, enhanced by his new speed and reflexes partly due to the Sharingan, albeit incomplete, managed to knock his hand off, knocking the weapon aside. "Let go of the boy," Sasuke ordered, squeezing the leader's wrist so hard that he howled. The child broke free and tumbled to the side, and Sakura quickly caught him, leading him beyond the safe line. "No, this won't do," the leader yelled furiously, trying to free himself. But then Naruto approached him, who actually felt all the movement in the air. Grabbing the bandit by the collar, he jerked him to the ground. With a cry, he fell, hitting his back on the boards. The other two bandits, seeing the failure of their threats, desperately rushed to the side, but one was instantly cut off by Sakura's kunai, and the second was caught by Kakashi, pinning him to the ground with his own sword. Triumph of freedom. Step by step, the situation stabilized. The freed workers loudly applauded, and some rushed to thank Team 7 and Tazuna personally. The old man himself, rubbing his bruised neck, looked pleased. "Thank you. Without you, they would have broken our spirit at the very last stage." Kakashi only smiled tiredly in response, showing that this was their job. Sasuke carefully stepped back, letting go of the defeated leader, who was immediately tied up by the local men. Sakura continued to check the condition of the hostage boy, and Naruto stood quietly nearby, touching the blindfold and trying to calm his breathing. He was glad that none of the residents were hurt. "Looks like it's really all over now," he muttered. Tazuna approached the boys and, seeing them to the core of the bridge, excitedly began to tell them what would happen now. "The bridge will open a direct route for trade. The village will grow stronger. Gato, having lost power, will not return, and the remaining bandits will sooner or later scatter. The residents will finally feel free." When the last brick was laid and the last boards were nailed down, the crowd of workers and residents exploded with joyful cries. Tazuna, standing on the ledge, raised his hands. "Hooray! The bridge is finished." People applauded, waved their hands, laughed and hugged. Their faces were full of sincere happiness and hope. "I want to call this bridge Naruto Bridge," Tazuna suddenly said, and many looked at each other in confusion. "Why?" Sakura asked, slightly embarrassed for her comrade. "Because this boy, despite his illness, gave us faith that the impossible is possible," Tazuna explained, catching Naruto by the shoulder. "It was like he connected our village with new hope. Like a bridge between despair and the future." Naruto blushed, smiling confusedly. "That's too big a name for a bridge," he muttered, embarrassed by such attention. But the crowd unanimously supported the idea. Naruto Bridge sounded unusual, but symbolic. Team 7, looking at the happy faces, realized that the mission had finally come to an end. They had fulfilled their duty, given people a chance for a better future, and they themselves had gained invaluable experience. Farewell to Tazuna. The next day, when the sun was just rising above the horizon, Team 7 gathered at the exit of the village. Tazuna came to see them off, taking with him his granddaughter and several friends who wanted to thank the ninja. The women brought baskets of fresh fruit, and someone carried a bag of bread to feed the squad on the road. "It's such a pity that you're leaving," said Tazuna's granddaughter, Aya, modestly hiding her face under a kerchief. "I wanted to ask Sakura-san for some more advice on medicinal herbs." "Another time," smiled Sakura, touching Aya's hand. ***, maybe we'll come back when we become strong shinobi and can travel to different countries." Sasuke nodded, briefly thanking them for their hospitality. He didn't like long speeches, but he understood how important this part of completing a mission was for ordinary people. Naruto, sensing the sincerity of these people, also bowed, expressing gratitude for their concern and support. "Take care," Kakashi added, turning to Tazuna. "If anything happens, Konoha is always ready to enter into a more serious protection treaty." "Thank you," Tazuna said excitedly, bowing. "Without your help, we would not have built the Naruto Bridge and fought off the new bandits. I and the entire land of waves will never forget that." To the cheers of the villagers, Team 7 set off. As they crossed the bridge, freshly painted and with carved railings, named after Naruto, everyone felt a pleasant sense of accomplishment. The sun shimmered joyfully through the light haze, as if blessing their journey back to Konoha. The return journey they walked slowly, as they were still recovering from the recent battles. Kakashi walked ahead, holding a map, occasionally switching to his favorite book, but did not forget to look back, checking on the condition of the students. Sakura was retelling funny moments that happened to the locals. Sasuke was silent, occasionally frowning when the conversation turned to the Sharingan, and Naruto was walking behind them, concentrating, thinking about everything that had happened. "Naruto," Kakashi suddenly called, slowing down. I've noticed that you've been withdrawing into yourself a lot lately. What's bothering you? The boy raised his face, smiling at the corner of his lips. I'm just thinking about Haku. About what the path of a shinobi can be. Sometimes we fight each other, not even suspecting what our true goals are. Kakashi nodded, seeing that there was a real struggle going on in Naruto's soul. Yes, ninja often face tragedies. But we can always choose to remain human, not to lose compassion. Your strength is not only summoning snakes and chakra vision. Strength is in the kindness and perseverance that you show. Naruto was silent, absorbing the sensei's words. He felt that his teacher understood him better than anyone else. Sakura and Sasuke, who were walking next to him, were also listening. Each of them felt an internal change after everything that had happened in the Land of Waves. Let's go back to Konoha, Kakashi said louder, turning to the others. There, you will officially receive recognition for completing the mission and, perhaps, some kind of reward from the Hokage. I hope it will be something more interesting than another cat-catching mission, Sasuke snorted, hinting at their previous routine missions. Sakura laughed, and Naruto only smiled quietly. He felt that a new stage was beginning in their lives, a stage in which they were no longer just children studying at the academy, but real genin who had undergone a harsh baptism of fire. And although there were many difficulties ahead, Team 7 had proven that they were capable of overcoming them if they were together. New Horizons. The journey home took a couple more days, but the route they had laid out seemed easier. The anxiety that had accompanied their journey to the Land of Waves was gone. Kakashi seemed to have relaxed a bit, often joking and discussing future training with his students. They exchanged ideas on how to best improve taijutsu, ninjutsu, and team strategy. Sakura, he suggested, you can strengthen your accuracy because you have good chakra control. And think about healing techniques. You already used some of them there, on the spot, but you had no formal training. The girl nodded, interested in the prospect of becoming more useful to the team. Deep down, she wanted to prove that she was capable of many things, and not just stand on the sidelines. Sasuke, Kakashi turned to the boy, it is important for you to learn how to control the Sharingan. Right now it has awakened in a stressful situation, but you can develop it further if you train wisely and slowly. Sasuke nodded tensely. For him, the Sharingan meant not only strength, but also the burden of the Uchiha clan's legacy, as well as memories of an old tragedy. However, he understood that this was a chance to become stronger. Naruto, the sensei finally said, addressing the blind boy, your unique ability to see the world with chakra has already helped us more than once. But you still have a lot of reserves. You can work on the range of sensation, as well as on the point reading of someone else's chakra, so that you can not only see the general outline, but also catch the nuances. Got it, Naruto responded, feeling inspiration in his heart. He never thought that sensei would notice such depth of his technique. But Kakashi was always attentive. Soon the familiar walls of Konoha appeared. The high gates, decorated with the symbol of the leaf, swung open before Team 7. The Chunin on duty nodded, welcoming their return, and the squad entered their native land. Home, Sakura whispered, enjoying the familiar comfort and noise of the village streets. For Naruto, the word, home, itself sounded unusual, because he had been an orphan since childhood, but Konoha was still a place where he was understood, supported. Or, at least, everything was heading that way. Well then, Kakashi summed up, stopping in front of the administration building. First we'll report to the Hokage, and then we'll get a chance to rest a little. The boys climbed the stone steps inside, tired but proud, feeling that they had passed an important stage of their lives. New adventures, new enemies and allies, new victories and lessons awaited them. But it was already clear, Team 7 had found unity and faith in each other, and Naruto, a blind orphan, showed the world that the true strength of a shinobi is not always in the sharpness of vision but in the fortitude of the spirit. It was midday and Team 7 was on a quiet street in Konoha. They had just left the administration building where they had given a detailed report on their mission in the Land of Waves. The third Hokage listened attentively to their story, periodically asking clarifying questions, and in the end noted that despite the unexpected difficulty, the mission had been completed excellently. He especially singled out the role of Naruto, who, despite being blind, had demonstrated a deep understanding of chakra and incredible determination. The street was calm, the sun's rays played on the green roofs, and a light breeze occasionally swayed the leaves on the trees near the small shops. Kakashi walked ahead, lazily opening his favorite book, and behind him were the three genin. Sakura was animatedly telling the latest village news, Sasuke was silently looking away, and Naruto was immersed in his own thoughts. Everything seemed quiet and serene, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the peace might be temporary. Conversation with the Hokage. Naruto still remembered the third Hokage's final words. He had warned that there were alarming rumors coming from neighboring countries about a possible united ninja renegades. There was little information yet, so there was no need to so panic, but Konoha needed to be on guard. "Sensei," Naruto asked cautiously, catching up with Kakashi, "do you think this danger could reach Konoha?" Kakashi looked up from his book, as if waking up from his thoughts. "I don't think it will be in the next few days," he replied. "But the Hokage is right, we need to be careful. If something happens, we will be among the first to be notified." Hearing this, Sasuke involuntarily became wary. After his success in the Land of Waves, he wanted to receive more serious missions, but the mention of ninja renegades indicated that things could be much more difficult and dangerous. New training that evening, Kakashi gathered the students at Training Ground 7, the same place where they had failed their first test of teamwork and where they had taken the bell test. It was already getting dark outside, and the air was warm and calm. Sensei believed that it was best to hone their skills in an environment where there was no obvious combat threat, so that they could focus on technique. Sakura practiced the precise release of chakra when throwing shuriken and kunai. She had already proven her effectiveness in the mission against the bandits, but now she was trying to improve her reaction speed and develop her combat intuition. Sasuke was learning to maintain his Sharingan and not overload his body. After awakening the Uchiha clan's eye during the fight with Haku, the ability was still unstable and consumed a lot of energy, requiring subtle chakra control. Naruto continued to strengthen his sensory ability. He tried to see not only the general outline of space, but also small details, for example, the movement of leaves, the swaying of grass due to insects and light gusts of wind. Such a level of perception could greatly help in combat, especially when blind. "Today we are focusing on endurance and precision," Kakashi said, putting the book in his pocket. "I want to see what you've accomplished since the Land of Waves and how you've learned from the previous mission." They trained until almost late at night. In the moonlight, kunai and shuriken flashed like tiny lightning bolts, and quiet commands like cover, dodge, clone were heard here and there. When fatigue took over and the genin could barely stand on their feet, Kakashi ended the session, advising them to take a few minutes of meditation before going to bed, to clear the mind of the accumulated tension. An unexpected visit the next morning. Sakura was getting ready to buy breakfast groceries and Sasuke was planning a short individual warm-up when Kakashi urgently called the entire Team 7 to the Hokage's residence. He looked worried. "We have a guest," the sensei explained briefly when everyone had gathered. "He says he brings important information about the renegades, the very ones the Hokage mentioned." Team 7 entered the third Hokage's office and saw a short man in dark brown clothes. He was clearly worried about something, and his voice trembled with tension. "My village," he began, hanging his head. "A few days ago, people appeared there calling themselves ninja from an unknown clan. They intimidate the residents, demand tribute, and those who do not agree, they take by force or recruit. We cannot resist them. They say that they are looking for some special people willing to listen to them." Naruto's heart sank as he listened to this story. Haku's words about people driven into despair, who are looking for at least some kind of support, came to mind. Sakura went cold, imagining how similar this was to the situation with Gato, and Sasuke pursed his lips in displeasure, again a dangerous group capable of turning a peaceful village into a place of terror. The third Hokage turned a thoughtful gaze to Kakashi and the genin. "Given your experience in the Land of Waves, I wish to entrust you with this task. Find out what is going on, but avoid direct confrontation until you are confident in your abilities." Kakashi bowed his head respectfully. "Understood. We will leave immediately." New mission. Unsettling premonitions as they left the residence, Kakashi sketched out a general plan. They needed to get to the petitioner's village, about 2 days' journey, talk to the locals, assess the situation, and if any real threats were discovered, immediately notify Konoha. The main goal was to understand whether this was a scattered group of bandits or part of a larger network threatening the entire region. Sakura frowned, feeling that the situation could turn into serious problems. Sasuke's eyes narrowed slightly predatorily. He was not afraid of difficult tasks. On the contrary, he wanted to prove himself and others what he was worth. Naruto was ready for the challenge, too, though he couldn't shake off the strange pressure in his chest, as if a new shadow was approaching, perhaps more threatening than before. "Let's go," Kakashi said, throwing his backpack over his shoulder. "Let's not waste time." The path through the forest, they headed northeast, deep into the vast forests. The paths became more and more winding, and the ground sometimes gave way to rocky slopes. At their first overnight stay, Kakashi carefully set up traps and signal threads around the camp so that they would not be caught off guard. "We will not repeat the situation with the Mist Ninja," he explained, checking the tension of the line. In the morning, they moved on. As they moved forward, the forest seemed more and more wild. There were broken trees, as if from battles, and here and there the remains of fires were visible. When the path narrowed and went through a hole, Naruto stopped for a moment, concentrating on his chakra vision. Sensei, he breathed out, there is something strange ahead. I sense several people, their chakra is unstable. Kakashi gave a signal to disperse and move silently. A few hundred meters away, they saw two men in dark clothing, matching the description of the renegades, who were examining the surrounding trees and making some marks on the bark. Looks like they're marking their territory, Sakura whispered. They might be preparing for something serious. Sasuke reached for his kunai. If we sneak up on them unnoticed, we can capture one for interrogation and maybe track the other one down. After a short thought, Kakashi agreed. Sakura and Sasuke were to distract the target, while Kakashi and Naruto were to attack from behind. Everything went almost according to plan. Sakura threw shurikens, forcing one of the men to turn around at the noise. Sasuke blocked his escape route, and Kakashi suddenly emerged behind the second, pinning him to the ground. Naruto, controlling the area, made sure that there were no reinforcements nearby. Who are you and why did you appear in the forests near Konoha? Kakashi asked coldly, squeezing the captive's shoulder. He resisted, but understood that his strength was clearly insufficient. Meanwhile, the second renegade jumped to the side and, taking advantage of the commotion, managed to escape into the depths of the forest. Team 7 allowed him to leave so that they could track his route later. We are looking for gifted ones. The captive growled. Our leader. He gathers ninja who feel the darkness in their hearts. He glanced anxiously at Kakashi and the genin. There are already several dozen people in our camp. We are being trained for a great goal. They promise power and freedom, and those who do not want to obey simply disappear. Sakura felt an unpleasant chill in her chest. All this sounded eerily similar to another gang, but at a more pumped-up level. Kakashi glanced at the students and realized that the task could grow into something more than simple reconnaissance. Sasuke darkened, clenching his fists. A terrible evening when his clan was massacred came back to him. Sakura glanced nervously at the prisoner, who seemed to have already realized that he had revealed everything. Naruto felt a dull knock in his temples. They are looking for darkness. Like Zabuza, or worse, how far is your camp? Kakashi asked, trying to keep his tone even. No, he's in the canyon across the river, about a day's journey. The renegade answered sullenly, looking away. He probably understood that going back there would mean signing his own death warrant. Kakashi pressed him harder to the ground. Calm down, we won't kill you. We'll just tie you up and leave you under guard until we decide what to do. He nodded resignedly, resigned to being held captive by the Konoha ninja. The inevitable choice Team 7 set up camp in a secluded place. Kakashi interrogated the prisoner in more detail, forcing him to describe the layout of the enemy camp and the approximate number of renegades. According to rumors, 30 to 40 fighters of various levels had settled in the canyon. Among them there could even be former Jonin or other highly skilled ninja. Sensei, this is too risky, Sasuke said, looking at Kakashi after the discussion. There are only 4 of us, and they are a whole squad. We need reinforcements. Sakura nodded silently. Common sense told her the same thing. Naruto fiddled with his blindfold, acutely feeling the threat gathering around him. Kakashi knew perfectly well that if he called for help from Konoha, it might already be too late. The enemies would change their location, take even more victims for themselves, or, God forbid, attack the nearest villages. Based on his own experience, he preferred to first scout everything on the spot. We need to see for ourselves what they are like, he said. If this is a really big threat, we will immediately send a signal to the Hokage and receive official reinforcements. But for now, no direct combat, just covert observation. Sasuke lifted his chin slightly, internally agreeing with the danger. Sakura sighed, realizing that they had no other choice. Naruto nodded without voicing any objections. The memory of the Land of Waves made him not hesitate at the chance to save someone's life. Prelude to the finale that night, everyone slept late. They had to discuss how exactly they would approach the canyon, what signals would be sent in case of detection, etc. Tomorrow they were going to go to the place where, according to the prisoner, the renegades were hiding. If all went according to plan, Team 7 would receive the necessary information and return to Konoha for help. But none of them could predict how risky everything would be. The power they were approaching could be more sinister than facing enemies on Zabuza's level. Even Kakashi didn't know what dark techniques the missing nin might practice, believing that the darkness in the heart was the source of their power. Naruto felt uneasy, thinking about Haku and his fate. Sasuke felt a tingling in his eyes, as if his Sharingan was warning him of the coming danger. Sakura had not forgotten how many forbidden jutsu destroyed not only the body but also the soul, and there might be those here who had been practicing them for a long time. Thus ended the day, which promised to be the penultimate, calm, moment in their lives. Tomorrow they would step into the enemy canyon, where a new threat would appear, testing their skills and unity. The upcoming clash could decide whether they would save not only the inhabitants of one village, but perhaps protect all of Konoha from a destructive force. How many forbidden jutsu destroy not only the body but also the soul, and here there could be those who have been practicing such things for a long time. Thus ended the day, which promised to be the penultimate, calm, moment in their lives. Tomorrow they would step into the enemy canyon, where a new threat would appear, testing the strength of their skills and unity. The upcoming clash could decide whether they would save not only the inhabitants of one village, but also, perhaps, protect all of Konoha from a destructive force. How many forbidden jutsu destroy not only the body but also the soul, and here there could be those who have been practicing such things for a long time. Thus ended the day, which promised to be the penultimate, calm, moment in their lives. Tomorrow they would step into the enemy canyon, where a new threat would appear, testing the strength of their skills and unity. The upcoming clash could decide whether they would save not only the inhabitants of one village, but also, perhaps, protect all of Konoha from a destructive force. A quiet dawn enveloped the edge of the forest with soft rays when Team 7 was already standing ready. A small river lay ahead, and behind it began a canyon, the very same lair of the renegades, where, according to the captured ninja, the dangerous group was concentrated. Kakashi, Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto understood that this sortie would be much more serious than their usual missions. Approaching the canyon in the evening, having studied the map and the testimony of the prisoner, the team developed a plan, stealthily penetrate a small elevation in the canyon to observe the camp from above. Gather information. How many ninja are actually there? What posts and guards they have? Are there any peaceful hostages? Retreat at the slightest threat and send a message to Konoha. Having a little refreshment in the pre-dawn hours, Team 7 set out. Sasuke was the first to dive into the shallow riverbed, checking the bank for traps. Sakura and Naruto walked slightly behind, and Kakashi brought up the rear, constantly looking back and checking the air for sense and chakra movements. Everything is fine, Sasuke whispered, having climbed to the opposite bank. At the other end of the river, the rocky ledges gradually turned into a deep gorge. Gloomy boulders, sharp rocks and cracked logs stuck out here and there, reminding that the foot of ordinary travelers had not set foot here for a long time. In the silence, only the coughing of the wind was heard. The first unpleasant surprises as they went deeper into the canyon, Naruto suddenly stopped, shuddering. "Sensei," he said, frowning under his white headband, "there are very strange chakra fluctuations ahead. There are many of them, but they seem to be scattered." Kakashi thought for a moment, checking his own sensitivity. He, too, sensed something was wrong, but he couldn't pinpoint the source. "Sakura," the sensei said quietly to the girl, "try going around to the right, check for any warding seals or fuin marks. Sasuke, to the left. Naruto and I will go through the central rise." Having decided to split up like this, they moved on cautiously, like ghosts in the twilight. Sakura, trying not to make any noise, slid between the boulders. She had learned from Haku and Zabuza how important silence was when scouting. Sasuke moved almost silently, using cover to avoid being seen by potential sentries. The paths to the left and right were clear, no seals or traps. But when Sakura and Sasuke returned to Kakashi, it turned out that the central path was strewn with strange black stones, which emitted an ominous chakra. Naruto nervously clenched his fists. He felt that these objects resonated with someone or something nearby. "Looks like a trap related to dark chakra," Kakashi muttered, feeling one of the stones with a kunai. "Don't touch them with your hands." As they carefully walked past, trying not to touch the scattered milestones, a view of the main camp opened up. Among the scree in the depths of the gorge, several wooden buildings were visible, similar to barracks or warehouses. People in black clothes with unfamiliar symbols on their protectors were walking near them. The eyes of some of them gleamed strangely, as if an evil fire was burning there. Observing the camp, Team 7 took cover behind a large boulder, from where they could look down on the camp. Sasuke turned on his Sharingan to see details. Sakura took out a small pair of binoculars. Naruto was intensively listening, with chakra, trying to make out where and how many people were. "I see about 30 people," Sasuke commented in a whisper, smoothly shifting his gaze. "It seems that among them there are at least a few former Jonin." Sakura also noticed some details. "Look, there are cages there, apparently with prisoners. So they may have hostages." Hearing this, Naruto clenched his teeth, feeling a surge of rage. He remembered how people in the Land of Waves suffered because of Gato, and realized that the situation here could be even worse. "The main thing is not to get too forward," Kakashi reminded in a half-whisper. "Our goal is to understand the structure and return." But, he stopped short, noticing a threatening-looking man approaching one of the cells, holding several paper scrolls in his hands. Through his Sharingan, Sasuke saw that these scrolls had intricate fuinjutsu signs on them. "Sensei," the Uchiha whispered, "it looks like they're performing some kind of ritual on the hostages." or sealing the chakra, an unexpected choice, save them or wait. Kakashi realized that they had two options. The first, immediately return to Konoha and bring a whole detachment of reinforcements. But it was unknown what would happen to the prisoners during this time. If the renegades decided to sacrifice them or transport them to a new shelter, it would be too late. The second, try to free the people themselves, at their own risk, and hope that there would be enough of them. Sensei, Sakura began, seeing the hesitation in her mentor's eyes. If we leave, the people could die. The risk is great, Kakashi sighed, casting a quick glance at the students. But if you were ready, he did not finish. But the team understood everything without words. Sasuke clenched his fists. For him, missing the chance to save the hostages was tantamount to cowardice. Naruto, although blind, felt an inner impulse. We can't abandon people, because then how are we better than indifferent ones? Sakura decided that she would use all the strength she had to help. Okay, Kakashi finally said. We act quietly. We will split into two groups. Sasuke and I will take on the distraction of strong opponents, and Sakura and Naruto will try to open the cages and take the hostages out. Then, an immediate retreat. The first fight the plan was worked out quickly. Sasuke, using the Sharingan, found the optimal entry point. Kakashi, having folded a couple of seals, created several shadow clones that were supposed to head to the western part of the camp to attract the attention of the guards. Sakura, Naruto, Kakashi nodded, be careful. If anything happens, give us a signal immediately, we'll cover you. After waiting for several black figures to rush towards the clones, Sakura and Naruto, using their stealth skills, stealthily headed towards the cages. At first, everything went quietly. The opponents really did move towards the western ledges, where a short fight with Kakashi's clones broke out. However, a ninja with a very nasty look was standing near one of the cages. Strange tattoos protruded from his neck, pulsating with an ominous aura. Who's there? He roared, noticing Sakura out of the corner of his eye when she was almost approaching. Sakura had no choice, it was impossible to stifle the noise now. She rushed forward, attacking him with a fist into which she carefully poured chakra. Naruto, feeling the vibrations of the enemy's chakra, threw a kunai in the other direction to knock him off course. The enemy tried to dodge, but Sakura's blow hit him right in the chest. The tree behind him cracked, and the ninja flew back a few steps, covered in blood. So, it worked, the girl exhaled, but inside she felt an echo of horror. After all, the enemy could be more than one. Sakura, Naruto called quietly, feeling for the lock of the cage. I feel two more. Approaching from the left, the girl immediately darted to the left, seeing two enemy shinobi running with kunai drawn. Sasuke and Kakashi were still far away, holding back most of the opponents. It remained to hope that they would not let in reinforcements. A battle on two fronts. Meanwhile, on the other side of the camp, Sasuke and Kakashi were facing some truly powerful fighters, some of whom were at least Chunin level, maybe even higher. Some of them had seals on their skin, like cursed marks that enhanced their chakra. This is a bad sign, Kakashi muttered, blocking a heavy blow. It looks like these aren't just bandits, but people who practice forbidden techniques. Sasuke activated his Sharingan, dodging a shuriken swing and firing several of his own in response. One of the opponents suddenly transformed his arm into a long tentacle of dark substance, deflecting the projectiles. The Uchiha frowned. Shit, I've never seen a technique like this. Kakashi immediately realized that this looked like a jutsu related to the dark chakra that the third Hokage had talked about. People who deliberately distorted their power often lost their human form and mind. It was best not to drag out a fight with someone like that. Sasuke, he called, we need to act quickly and prevent them from joining forces. He nodded. With a wave of his hand, Sasuke released a fire technique, Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu. A ball of flame burst out, forcing the opponents to jump back sharply. Kakashi took advantage of the moment to throw a couple of clans forward. The clones broke through the smoke, deliberately creating confusion. When one of the enemy ninja destroyed the clone, the real Kakashi attacked from the side with a kunai, cutting off a muscle in his shoulder. The second opponent hissed furiously and rushed at Sasuke, but the Sharingan allowed the Uchiha to slip away in time and carry out a counterattack. Rescuing the hostages at the same time, Sakura managed to parry the attack of two shinobi at once. Her kunai throwing accuracy, honed during her recent training, did not fail. One enemy received a deep wound in the side, the other, not expecting such decisive resistance, stepped back, giving the girl a moment of respite. Naruto, she shouted, how is the lock? Almost done. The boy's voice trembled with tension. Unfortunately, he could not see with his normal eyes, but he felt the thin puzzles in the mechanism, directing chakra to the tip of the knife with which he opened the bolt. One click, and the rusty lock gave in. The door of the cage swung open. Frightened people crowded inside, 5 in total, 2 of them badly wounded. Sakura, turning to the enemies, shouted for them to come out, but carefully and quickly. Hide behind that boulder, she added, pointing with her hand. We will try to break through to the exit. However, there was still one dangerous moment. A ninja was already running to the next cage, ready to seal the remaining prisoners. Naruto immediately rushed there, releasing chakra into his legs to speed up. The enemy noticed him at the last moment and threw a dozen senbon. The boy did not see them with his eyes, but felt the trajectory. He did a sharp somersault to the side, letting the sharp needles pass by. Kuchio's no jutsu, he shouted, calling his snake. A black snake crawled out of a cloud of smoke, hissing and rushing straight at the enemy. He jumped back, but lost precious seconds, and Naruto managed to run to the door of the cage. 2 more quick swings of the knife, and the lock was broken. The prisoners were on the verge of exhaustion, but they had a chance to escape. Go to Sakura, Naruto shouted, covering them with the snake. The enemy, seeing that he had lost control over the hostages, roared in rage and made several quick seals. Meanwhile, Naruto felt a clot of cold chakra, as if it was festering from the inside. Watch out, he warned the snake, dodging a surge of dark energy. The snake flew away, hissing, and began to melt. The enemy used something like a spray of summoned creatures. Naruto himself almost got hit, but jumped back in time, suppressing his fear and the desire to hit harder. Meeting with the leader suddenly, above all this rumble, the cries of the wounded and the clang of weapons, a low voice was heard. What is going on here? A tall man in a cloak with a wide collar, from which long black hair stuck out, was slowly walking towards the far entrance to the camp. His eyes glowed with a strange yellow haze, and there were carved symbols on his hands. Naruto realized from his chakra aura that this was probably the leader of the renegades himself. Sasuke and Kakashi, having knocked out another enemy, also turned their attention to him. Apparently, especially dense dark energy was gathering around the leader. Are you a Konoha ninja? The leader asked, pointing at Kakashi with disdain. How dare you poke your nose into my domain? You kidnapped innocents, Kakashi snapped, clutching a kunai. We couldn't stay away. He only grinned evilly, and then quickly made seals. An evil wave of power swept through the camp. It seemed to hit the nerves and cause a terrible cold. Some of the missing nin who were nearby suddenly began to develop even more obvious seals on their skin. They groaned as if in excruciating pain, but their eyes were filled with madness. What the? Sakura muttered, unsure of how to react. Her doctor's instincts told her that these people were being exposed to a terrible effect. My grand goal, the leader said, baring his teeth, is to create a legion that surpasses ordinary shinobi due to dark chakra. If they survive the process, they will become my ideal warriors. The climactic battle. Such a confession meant that the conversation was over. The leader commanded several of the enhanced ninja to attack Team 7, and he himself seemed to be aiming at Kakashi. The teacher and the dark leader were frozen in a deadly confrontation. Sasuke, Kakashi shouted shortly, I'll handle the main thing. You, Sakura, and Naruto take out the prisoners. But Sasuke looked at the leader of the renegades, mesmerized for a moment. The Uchiha's eyes lit up with a thirst to test himself. His Sharingan was burning, his heart was pounding. He realized that he couldn't resist fighting and that this might be the only way to protect his friends. Meanwhile, Sakura was helping the wounded, showing them the way out. She was in a hurry, feeling that there was little time. The enemies could block the road. Naruto covered them, seeing, with his sensory abilities, where the remaining enemies were heading. There were still quite a few of them, but some had been scattered during the chaotic battle. Clash with the enhanced ninjas. Suddenly, 4 shinobi infected with dark chakra attacked Sasuke in unison, furiously spinning their weapons. Sasuke blocked one blow, dodged the second, but the third threatened to hit his shoulder. The Sharingan in his eyes spun, allowing him to slow down his perception a little, and he miraculously avoided the fatal attack. Swinging a kunai, the Uchiha left a deep cut on the side of one enemy. Sasuke felt himself starting to breathe with difficulty. His energy was running out, and his opponents knew no fatigue. Naruto, who had detected this by the fluctuation of his chakra, rushed to help. Relying on his quick reaction, he rushed forward, threw a kunai at the back of one of the enhanced ones. He hit. He flinched, but did not fall. Apparently, the pain only angered him. Then Sasuke attacked from above with the fire technique Gokaku no Jutsu, and together they managed to crush the enemy. The remaining 2 retreated for a moment, growling gutturally. Their eyes filled with a bloody shine. It seemed that they were no longer people, but living puppets of dark chakra. Naruto felt streams of malice from them, which pressed on his psyche. Sasuke, hold on, Naruto shouted, tensely feeling that he was at the limit of his strength. Sasuke nodded, gritting his teeth. He covered Naruto with his back, who saw their chakra, and Naruto helped him navigate, warning him of hidden attacks. Together, they repelled new attacks, although they received a couple of shallow wounds. But another enemy was defeated, and the fourth, seeing that the situation was becoming critical, rushed back into the depths of the camp. Kakashi and the leader fight while Sasuke and Naruto held back the reinforced. Kakashi clashed with the leader in a furious fight. He showed rare and forbidden techniques, enveloping his hands in a dark aura and throwing back the sensei with sharp bursts of strength. However, Kakashi dodged, combining lightning-fast kunai strikes and substitutions. "You have too many dirty tricks," Kakashi exhaled, slightly staggering from the counter-blow. The leader only grinned, a yellow gleam in his eyes. "There are enough desperate people in the world who are ready to serve my power. You and your children will not be able to save everyone." Just like Gato wanted to break people, Kakashi muttered, remembering their previous experience. "But you are unlikely to run away. Konoha will not tolerate people like you." Deciding not to delay, Kakashi folded the familiar seals, calling upon the power of lightning, Reikiri. A sphere of bluish-white lightning flashed in the sensei's palm, making the sound of 1,000 birds. Kakashi's face remained hard. He knew that with this technique he risked delivering a fatal blow, but he saw no other way out. The leader of the renegades did not hesitate either, condensing black pulsating energy around his hands. They collided, lightning striking the dark ball, and both staggered as their efforts became roughly comparable. Kakashi felt Reikiri beginning to dissipate, and took a desperate step forward, trying to break through the leader's defense. The dark aura cracked, the leader threw Kakashi away, but in doing so received a severe wound to the side. Blood gushed onto the ground. "And no way," he groaned, sinking to his knees. "My work is not finished." "It is finished, indeed," Kakashi responded, pressing his hand to the bleeding wound on his shoulder. "Your plan is doomed." The leader, choking on blood, wanted to say something, but his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed face down into the dust of the canyon. The dark chakra enveloping his body began to dissipate, turning into black smoke. Escape from the canyon. Realizing that their Supreme was defeated, the remaining renegades began to panic and scatter. Some tried to finish off the hostages, but Sakura kept them from getting any closer with kunai and short attacks. Sasuke and Naruto supported her, helping the wounded captives out. Kakashi, breathing heavily, came to them, looking around the bloody arena. Bodies were scattered everywhere, and somewhere else, the groans of those who were not dead, but could not get up, could be heard. "Is everyone alive?" he asked, turning his gaze to his charges. "We only have minor wounds," Sakura reported, trying to bandage a cut on Sasuke's arm. "Naruto is okay, a little bruised." The boy nodded, tiredly removing the sweat-soaked bandage from his forehead over the main one. "The main thing is that the prisoners are free." There were about 10 people among the freed people. Some needed urgent medical attention. Sakura did the simplest bandages, and Kakashi looked around. The group of renegades was practically routed, but in such places, escaping enemies are always possible. "We're leaving," he decided. "We have enough information, plus we saved the hostages. It's time to return to Konoha and call for reinforcements for the final cleanup." Everyone agreed. Sasuke and Naruto helped get the wounded back on their feet, and Team 7 began a hasty retreat. They moved carefully but quickly so that no one would intercept them at the exit of the canyon. Half an hour later, the forest welcomed them back into its embrace, hiding the remains of the camp from view. Return and results. The way back took a little longer, because they had to walk along with the wounded prisoners. However, thanks to Sakura's basic skills, no one died from their wounds. When they reached the borders of Konoha, they already knew about their return. Scouts had signaled the Hokage about the appearance of a group of refugees, and a detachment of ninja healers was waiting at the gates to receive the rescued. "You look good," one of the ninja medics smiled tiredly, looking over Group 7. "But we still need to take care of your wounds." Kakashi and his students went out to the administrative building, where the third Hokage was already waiting for them. He listened with a calm face as they attacked the camp of the renegades, saved the hostages, and defeated the leader who used dark chakra. "Your actions were risky," the Hokage said seriously, putting away the phone. "But you acted in good conscience, saving people. It is honorable, even though it could have ended in tragedy. Now we will send additional forces to secure that canyon and sort out everything that was left there." Kakashi bowed slightly, accepting the remark. "We understood the risk, but we acted for the greater good." The Hokage nodded briefly, then turned his gaze to the 3 teenagers. "You are no longer the green rookies you were at the academy." Sakura showed resourcefulness and courage, Sasuke showed the ability to fight a stronger opponent and control the Sharingan, and Naruto. He paused for a moment, looking at the boy with white hair and a blindfold. "Naruto, you have proven once again that even blindness cannot overshadow the willpower of a shinobi. Your sensory talent, determination, and willingness to sacrifice yourself to save others deserve respect." Naruto stood with his head down, slightly embarrassed by such praise. He remembered all the trials he had gone through, from the exam at the academy to the battle with Zabuza and the missing nin in the canyon. he felt deep gratitude to his comrades and mentor. Epilogue. After the audience with the Hokage, the team finally had time to rest and recover. Kakashi wrote a formal report, and Sakura periodically visited the people rescued from captivity in the hospital. Sasuke continued to train in the use of the Sharingan, realizing that his power was only the beginning of a long journey. Naruto, on the other hand, tried to polish his ability to see with chakra, even more subtly, because Konoha itself, and there were plenty of people outside of it who needed protection. When they gathered in a quiet courtyard a few days later to train together, there was a new feeling in the air, a feeling of true team cohesion. No longer did anyone look at Naruto as a helpless, blind man. He had proven himself worthy of being a shinobi of Konoha. Sasuke respected everyone's contribution to the common cause, and Sakura no longer doubted that they were all equal. Kakashi closed his book and put it aside. So, guys, are you ready for the next stage? We still have hundreds of missions ahead of us, and I want us to continue to grow together. Sakura smiled, Sasuke slightly raised an eyebrow, and Naruto quietly nodded. Confidence smoldered in his soul. Team 7 had become a real family for him, and the shinobi world, full of dangers and trials, was a place where he could prove that blindness is not an obstacle to true strength of spirit. The end.